Paul Collum, thank you for coming on to Easy Talk, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. That's awesome.
I'm very keen on Mike Rogers, and he's had three guests for me now: Pete Mankey, Todd Fox, and now you.
Sure.
And Pete Mankey and Todd Fox are both military backgrounds and private security and things like that. I don't think that's you though.
No.
No. Okay, you're just like a badass in folk style and Greco style
Sure,
Roman
freestyle.
wrestling.
Yeah. Yep.
Greco? No.
I did a little bit of Greco in high school. It didn't last until senior year. So freestyle and folk style.
Got you.
Yeah.
How do you know Mike Rogers?
So I knew Mike through Tyron a little bit, Tyron Woodley, just because I went to Mizzou with him, and so I knew he was fighting in St. Charles, and I was coaching in St. Charles at that time. So I already kind of had an idea who Mike Rogers is, and then in 2020 when I came back to wrestling. Luke Lilladall and his dad, Drew, we needed a place to work out because I was out of wrestling for about 8 years in there, just kind of working and, hanging out with my family kind of thing. And Mike was the first call from Drew. And so we eventually got to the gym and started working out there. And Mike decided to invite me for lunch and try to get me to come in and start running a club out of the gym. So we did that for a little bit of the summer. And then the club got too big this last year where we had 220, 30 kids signed up for the summer club. And so we had to run that at Francis Howell.
Bless.
Yeah, so we ran that at Francis Howell end of February all the way until the end of this October.
Did you work with Sampo on that one?
Yeah,
Okay.
Sampo and Coach Stroh, and then Coach Corley, who's also the Junior Vikings coach as well, too.
Dude, that is amazing. How do you get 200 kids to sign up for a program, man?
Who knows? I had great coaches. I had great clubs.
Girls and boys?
Yeah, everything.
Yeah, okay.
And so end of February, when high school season ends, the high schoolers can come into club now because Misha has some rules where you can't do that. You kind of know that.
Yeah.
And so we did that 3 days a week until the end of October. It's like 90, 96, 97 practices for the whole summer. So we had high school girls, high school boys, anybody under 8th grade, high school, elementary school, boys and girls. And so 2 clubs came together initially. The Wentzville Federation came together with Charlie Rollo and the Francis Howell Junior Vikings with Coach Corley. They came together and kind of pulled that together. So we did it together and I ran it. Which is why Mike says I'm independent because I don't really have my own club per se. And then all the other regions in the area kind of came together too. We had some folks from North County, South County. We had folks from Illinois coming over, just everywhere. So it ended up where we had to cut it off. And then we started letting kids in as kids kind of trickled off for the season like they always do.
Do you mind if I ask the purpose of this program? Is it to try to instill the fundamentals of wrestling? Is it to try to instill, or not instill, forgive me, but to give access to the next level for kids? Perhaps they're already maybe, state qualifiers or something like that to get them to that podium. Is it to try to attract people to the sport of wrestling? Where do you feel like your program fits?
Yeah, easy. I just want kids to enjoy the sport and love the sport and then love learning about the sport. So it's all levels. Doesn't matter where they're at. They can come in and listen and work, and I'll help them out as much as possible. My coach is in high school. When I finally got the right coach in high school, we were watching videos. We were talking about people from Russia, from Iran, and it really opened my eyes to there's more to this sport than just what's in Illinois and high school and those types of things. And so that kind of opened my brain to go, okay, we need to start studying film and kind of doing those things. And I try to do that with those kids there too. I always bring up names of foreigners that won the Olympics, and we kind of talk through their technique. And I want them to go back and watch the videos and kind of learn and love the sport. If I can do that, I think we probably did a good job with them.
What is it about the sport of wrestling that causes you to have such a gravitation towards it? Like, I see a lot of guys, myself included, wrestling was the first martial art that I fell in love with. Instilled a lot of discipline in me, work ethic, in a lot of ways gave me the foundation of the man that I am today.
Sure.
But then when push came to shove, I kind of was steered towards mixed martial arts. It doesn't sound like that was you. It sounds like you've always kind of kept this love for wrestling.
Yep.
Explain that to me.
Yeah, it was just part of just what was going on with my life at the time. And so my brother kind of moved out of wrestling and went into MMA for a little bit and is a black belt in Chicago under Jeff Neal at Carlston Gracie.
He was in jiu-jitsu?
Yeah.
Okay, forgive me.
So he went into that a little bit. That wasn't really my niche. I had a family at the time when we were kind of transitioning out of wrestling myself and then going into coaching. So I just really never got into it, never had time to it.
Forgive me, when you say transitioning out of wrestling, you don't mean the sport, you mean competition?
Yeah, competition.
Like you were going from competing to coaching.
That's right.
Forgive me.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I got into coaching right away, and that's the thing I fell in love with, to kind of get people to go. I had great coaches that would put their gear on and warm up with me, and they always had their stuff on. And so I tried to do the same thing with my kids, and that just kind of built a a love for the sport. I wanted to learn about it. I wanted to keep getting better just so I can get better for the kids that I'm coaching too.
I can't explain to you how much of a value that is. When I was in high school, one of the greatest things that I had was my coaches would, I also think that there's a benefit to that because wrestling is a very tough sport to kind of articulate.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a much more, it's cerebral, but it's also physical, right?
Sure.
So it's like being able to physically show the move, kind of give them the pressure or the leverage. It really resonates a lot easier for me to teach,
Yep.
to show versus just speak to it.
Sure.
And I do that as well myself. And I think there's like this added camaraderie to it because I often tell the kids, and I would love to kind of throw some of the things that I do as a coach, and I would love to see what you think about it. But
Sure.
I try to instill into them, and I'll say this often, it's like I will never tell you to do something that I either have not done or would do.
100%.
And that in a lot of ways, whatever I'm instilling to you was the things that worked that were instilled to me. I'm kind of leaving out a lot of the archaic stuff that, we just didn't know as much back then, and times change and you progress. But I will say that one of the things that I kept that my coach did was actually put on the shoes, get in there and roll with the kids. If for any other reason, then I find that time to earn respect is greatly reduced. The amount of time it takes for the new kids that come in to for them to kind of respect what it is that I'm saying.
Sure.
because proof is in the pudding.
Yep.
Like, oh, well, this guy doesn't know what he's doing.
I
Oh,
love
really?
it.
Come on the mats. Let me show you how much I
yeah.
know what I'm doing.
Yeah, same way.
It's different because and I think in other sports the basketball coach, the football coach, they're not actually out there tackling the kids or busting a 3-pointer on the kid.
'Cause yeah.
Do you think that when you say that you had coaches that put on the gear and rolled with you, and you put on the gear and rolled with coaches, do you think that's something that has inherent value? Because on the flip side, what if you're too old?
Yeah.
You still have something to give, right? We also have our head coach is 72 years old.
Sure.
He can't get on the mats like he used to, but he's still integral in the team.
Sure.
So how do you balance the youth and vigor with the ability to actually go out there and roll with the kids simultaneously with, the wisdom and the tenure?
Sure. Well, first, I'll tell you that for me, I'm going to stay in shape as long as I can so I can do it as long as I can. So that's a big thing for me. I can get to 55, 60 and still be on the mats with them. I think I won at that. I don't think you can replace that much, even if you're the cerebral CEO of the program and you have to step away because you're a little bit older. But maybe your role kind of transitions and you got the right coaches underneath you that you kind of trained. I don't see a replacement for putting your stuff on and drilling with the guys and drilling with the kids, whatever the age they are. Kind of what I do with Luke Lillidahl. When he comes in and gets trained, I don't just coach him technique. My job is to make sure I'm in shape so I can roll with a college kid now, right? So I have to actually put in the work to be in shape for that too. Because I think, again, the respect and camaraderie just doesn't get built the same way if you're just sitting off the side and kind of yelling stuff at them or telling them to do stuff. And I'm the same way. If a kid comes from the far end of the mat and says, I don't know how to do this move you just taught me, I don't let them sit there and talk to me about it. I say, go back with your partner. I'm going to follow you and you show me what you're doing wrong so I can actually see it myself, because that's how I learn to help them out, right? Most of my private sessions, I just sit off to the side and I let them spar a little bit until they get into situations they can't figure out. And then I'll go, all right, this is what we needed to do there. And that fixes them really fast, right? And really, our technique and our standard inside the wrestling room is the fundamentals and the basics. Because if you look at somebody like Jordan Burroughs and some of those guys that are winning the Olympics, they're good at head blocking and defense. They have a great stance. They're good at hand fighting, and they're good at finishing their shots. And it's only 1 or 2 shots. So we try to instill that. If I have any kind of standard or any plan, it's that we're going to be great at the fundamentals inside a room.
Just wanted to take a second to pause the action and just tell you guys, thank you so much for consuming our content. Easy Talk is a passion project. This podcast is just a bunch of like-minded people coming together to produce some cool stuff and talk to some cool people. One of the things I would very much appreciate is if you could possibly like the video or subscribe to the channel, just because it helps us in the algorithm and ultimately to grow, to get more exposure to everybody, including ourselves, and ultimately just make a better product. Take a second, I'd greatly appreciate it, and on with the show. You briefly were telling me that the product of your program is, essentially for all skill levels. Uh-huh. But that presents itself an immense challenge because you have such a delta in terms of skill sets, right?
Sure.
The person coming in, how do you create a curriculum that entices and makes the brand new wrestler feel welcome,
Sure.
while simultaneously not boring or creating a place of like, apathy for the extremely skilled wrestler.
Sure.
It's
Yeah.
like, well, okay, I'll explain to you why I say this. It feels like the first week of high school wrestling, I feel bad for everybody that's been there for more than a year, because what am I going over? This is a wrestling stance. This is, down position. This is top. But you have to go over this for the first years, right? How do you kind of overcome that with your program?
So earlier, we don't necessarily have that problem now. Like that whole club that was there this summer, there was a mix of ranges of like skill level, but there were so many kids that had already been with me, private sessions or whatever else we were doing, that they would just fall into like they know the drill, and so the handful of guys over here would just look at them and go, okay, that's what we're doing. And so it was very little help that was needed really. Maybe it was some things where like you put your foot here when you step and penetrate and those types of things. When it was earlier, yeah, we had to go back and do that stuff, but I let the other guys kind of progress a little bit farther while they were doing it. Like, hey, we're working on stances today, but I want you guys to hand fight to a shot while you're over there in your stance, kind of thing. And then I would go back with the new guys and kind of, they would eventually kind of get close enough where we can kind of go back to, here's our standard for the day and here's the plan for the day. And I go back to the plan because I don't usually have a plan per se. I have things I write down on my piece of paper because I actually have some key points I want to go over every day for practice. But I let my kids spar for 5 or 10 minutes before practice starts or at the beginning of practice, so I can go, okay, I can see that, this group over here, this is what we need today, or this group over here, this is what we need today. And sometimes I change that whole thing that was on my list of paper, right? Because that's not, maybe that's too far out, or maybe that's too basic. And I'm going, hey, this kid's not getting his shoulder in the right place when he takes his shot. This kid over here is not really head blocking today. So we'll go back and kind of go through that stuff again, just so I can start practice the right way and then eventually get into whatever I had planned for the day.
I might actually adopt that. Actually, when you say it the way you did, the way I do my class is essentially like, cardio to begin with to get everybody loose, team stretch, and then I'll immediately start with like the discipline of that day, like today's fireman's carries or today's the high crotch or whatever. And the way I try to do it is like one technique move from all three positions.
Sure.
So one from a neutral,
Right.
one from a breakdown, like you're on top, you want to break your opponent down, how to turn them to their back, and then also like an escape or reversal or some sort of benefit in terms of motion.
Yeah.
But I never thought about, and then what I do is then I have them spar, and the goal or the idea, actually drill, then spar, and the goal is hopefully in some point today someone starts going for some of the moves that we went through that day.
Yep.
But I do like this approach of like, it's good to have a plan, obviously, but it's like, all right, like we're gonna do like 10, 15 minutes of live roll, pick a partner, and then just kind of like see what everyone's doing and maybe pick out like a few common mistakes between all people. I might adopt that. I think that's very wise.
Yeah, it works well. I've seen kids go from one tournament, come in the next week and kind of work on it, and then like the next week, week 2, after it's out of their mind a little bit, they'll come in and spar and forget all the stuff we talked about the last week, and I just got to go, okay, again, my focus is basics and fundamentals because that's what makes really good kids good. And I'm going to go back to that and we're going to drill that out. I don't even warm up anymore. I just tell kids we're going to spar for 5, 10, 15 minutes, and they kind of ease themselves into spar. And by the time their body is actually stretched with the pieces that they need for wrestling, I don't have any injuries. I haven't had any injuries from people not stretching, not warming up the whole summer. Just spar nice and light with your partner on your feet. Then let's go top and bottom. And eventually they just kind of move well. And I got them warmed up enough where I can start yelling cues out in the sparring, like, hey, remember your head blocks, remember your sprawls. Remember, when we shoot, we drive through and get up to our feet on those shots because we don't finish stuff down very much. So some of those things kind of, again, they build out of the sparring because I can change the whole direction of the practice if I see sparring just completely out of it. It's not going well. And I also think sparring for one is probably the best thing we can do in any practice. Live wrestlings, people get tight and they stop doing stuff that we need them to do. They don't fire because I don't want to lose to this guy. If you say sparring, they flow a little bit better. They move a lot more. Maybe they should hand fight a little bit better. They fake.
Why do you use that verbiage, sparring instead of live roll?
Just because it makes them looser. If I was going to go into, and my coach back in high school, Ed Geezy, who was at Foxcatcher, we kind of did that, but we didn't have a name for it back then. We didn't call it sparring. I would just come in and do private sessions with him for an hour, hour and a half, and I would wrestle, he would spar and beat me up. And so we already had that, and I can tell you that's where I got really good because I know he's not really going to beat me up all day today. He might beat me up in some situations, but I know I can fire. I can just keep shooting, I can keep hand fighting, and I can figure stuff out. And so when you go back to like looking at how well I got or how good I got after that, it's because I was just flowing the whole time. right? But when you start getting people that don't understand why we spar and you stay live and then they tighten up and they don't move and they just stay in a stance and maybe they reach too much and they don't move, I can get kids to spar for 30 minutes and they're probably going to be in better shape than live wrestling just because I know they're going to move, right? No, it doesn't matter who wins. I just want you to flow, hand fight, move positions the whole time. And they usually figure it
with
out.
Wrestling.
Yeah. Yeah.
I often say that a lot of times. Actually, we were just talking about it with Lucas Clay, and we say that a lot of times when we're talking about the cardio of a martial artist, jiu-jitsu, wrestling, whatever,
Sure.
we tend to really focus on the physicality. Like, did you do your road work? Did you do your strength and conditioning?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But sometimes it's like, and I'm sure you can attest to this now, but like, because like, I know that when I'm grappling, I'm in a constant flow state. I'm not thinking about anything that I'm doing.
Yep.
It's more feel. I've been here 1,000 times before. It's leverage. It's push-pull. It's pressure. But to articulate that to a kid is, in my opinion, next to impossible.
Yep.
And it was a constant repetition over a course of time that got me to that point. And I tell the kids, like, hey, runners run, swimmers swim, fighters fight. But in wrestling, how do I get, like, better condition in wrestling? Wrestle.
Yeah.
Wrestle,
That's right.
wrestle, low intensity, high volume, where you're just constantly going for shots.
Yep.
Tie your shots together, because that's exhausting. Yep. Going from a single leg to, a blast double, or, you go for a blast double, let your partner sprawl, and then try to transition to like a peekaboo or something. Just when you attach shots in, then you start realizing, oh man, like, this really good wrestler is going to stuff my double leg all day.
Yep.
But if I go for the double leg, tie it to a single leg, possibly transition to something else,
sure,
I might get him with that third one.
Yep.
But I have to be in both mental shape to tie those three moves together and back it up with my physical shape to actually be able to execute this.
Agreed.
You have, 230 kids. That's such an astronomically high number for my brain to even conceptualize. 'Cause we have like 50 kids, and I'm like, we have like 4 coaches, 50 kids, and even then sometimes I feel like it's not enough.
Sure.
How many coaches do you guys have for this program?
Yeah, so we had a couple of the kids club coaches that came over: Charlie Rollo, Scott Corley, Ben Wells' dad from WWF as well. So we had a core group of coaches, and then some of the parents that I make sure they understand, like, you can definitely come on the mat and help, especially when we had that many kids. I don't kick kids.
Really?
I don't kick parents out of the room. I want them to help. For the most part, once you figure out, like, hey, it is open to help, they usually do a good job. They'll come over and ask me questions if they don't understand what they're doing, to try to teach the kids too.
It's amazing that you don't have a problem with ego.
Not one bit.
Because that would scare me.
Yeah.
I don't want to say scare, forgive me. That would introduce variables that I would be afraid of. It's the last thing I need is like the one father coming in and like being too hard on his son or something like that.
Yeah, sure. It's probably because I don't have an ego too, because wrestling does have an ego with lots of parents and different clubs. I stay out of that stuff. If a King Select coach wants to coach with me in the corner because the kid goes to both clubs, I love it. If Perler wants to coach with me in the corner because the kid goes to both clubs, I love it. If a kid comes to me and says, what club should I go to? You definitely shouldn't only come to my club. I think you should get everywhere. Learn how they coach, learn how he teaches it, learn how this person wrestles, go get some different competition and partners. I don't want kids just to come to me. I want them to go everywhere. It's part of what makes, like, a Jordan Burroughs and those types of guys win the Olympics. Like, they have a whole village around them. It wasn't just one coach and one parent with them. It was a whole village. Like, you have to go everywhere and figure stuff out. And eventually you get to the coach that teaches you that one thing you can't figure out a different way, and you figure it out. It's not always from me or from that one coach. Like, you got to get places and kind of hear those things different ways.
You say that you don't have an ego, and then, wrestling is definitely like an ego-driven sport.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a singular sport. It's complete victory or utter defeat, and it's all on your shoulders. And that's why I think it's such an enticing sport.
Sure.
Because in football, it's riddled with excuses. Oh, the guy didn't throw me the ball.
Yeah,
The coach didn't see my value. I didn't play enough rounds. Or in basketball, I'm not first string. The beauty of wrestling is, like, I tell the kids all the time, I was like, hey, I don't choose varsity.
Yep.
You guys choose varsity.
That's right.
Every Monday we have our challenges, and if at any moment you want somebody's spot, challenge them.
That's right.
That's what we did today, actually. We did our challenges, and we had 2, like, big mats. We were doing both. We got done with all the challenges in, like, 30 minutes, and it was astounding to me how, like, some kids, like the freshmen and stuff like that, we'd be like, hey, do you want to challenge for varsity? Some of them would be like, no, because I'm going to lose. And it's funny how little it took to convince them to challenge. It's like, how do you know?
Yep, that's
Like,
right.
what do you mean? Like, what are you here for? Why not try?
Yep.
I go, you might lose 19 times this year.
Yep.
And that 20th time, maybe you win and you're varsity the last week of the season. You don't know.
Yep.
but you know for sure that you won't be if you don't try. And it's kind of euphoric to see a kid like it connects, like, yeah, coach, like, yeah, you're right. I should try, like, whatever. We have this quote on there, and it's one of my, I love this quote even when I was like 13, 14, and it's failure has defeated more men than trying.
Sure.
Sorry, the fear of failure has defeated more men than trying. And it's just like, if you don't even try, man, you already lost. 100% chance.
Great about the sport. You have to try. You're going to get better. You're going to lose and get life lessons from it. Like it transfers to life. It's awesome.
So then how do you not have this ego when it's such an ego-driven sport? Do you think it was beaten out of you?
Yeah, probably a little bit. I'm also, I think the break in between the 2013 season when I left college coaching to basically 2020 with my son starting to wrestle, like that whole time I got into my work career and business, and like I'm a business coach, and so I understand like the egos from business leaders too. It just doesn't bother me whatsoever, and it has no place in wrestling whatsoever. I think it's tough to get out of this sport, like you said, because it is an ego-driven sport. Because everybody wants to be, hey, my team's the best, and my kid's the best. But at the same time, I don't charge a lot for my club. If they want to come to private sessions, it's $10, and if parents don't ask me, I don't even tell them what the price is, and I don't even ask them for their money.
$10 is,
yeah. So
that's a steal.
So in my head, I don't want to start a club and get a building because I want to keep the ego out of it. Because again, it's $10, and if I just can't be there, I can't be there on Friday. Sorry, we'll reconvene next Friday, and so it keeps the ego out of there. And eventually, I think parents kind of see like I do care about their kids. It doesn't matter what kid it is. Like my job is to help them get better, and I will spend as much time as you need me with that kid to get them better. And usually it is the fundamentals where they start figuring stuff out. I do video review with them when they need to. And we spent a lot of time for basically our club was $180 for the whole summer. It's almost 9 months.
That's a steal.
I know. It's under $2 a session to come out because we did it 3 days a week. And so I think kids are buying into the, like, that we do.
Is that open? Forgive me. Is that open to anybody in the St. Louis Metropolitan?
Yeah, anybody.
When we're done with this,
yeah, sure.
we're going to have to talk. I would love for my kids to come up there in the summer. Because right now I do a summer program. And it's just me.
Yeah.
And one of the things that Athens really losing right now is we don't have a youth program anymore.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So it's really tough. A lot of times I'm getting these freshmen that know nothing.
Yeah, sure.
So then I try to do the summer classes to try to keep, I tell them, I go, listen, if you guys want to be good in this sport, you have to wrestle year round.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that you can't play baseball in the spring or play football in the fall. What I am saying is, at least in the summer, those 3 months, I'm here 2 days a week, and I don't charge anything. You know what I mean? I was like, just come.
Yep.
And that helps. But I mean, if you're doing $180 for a summer, 3 days a week with all these coaches, it's a much better value than I can ever do.
Yeah, come on over.
Yeah, I think I might take you up on that.
Yeah,
offer.
we have plenty that come over from Illinois. We have some kids come from Middle State. We got some kids come from basically down in Farmington or Park Hill. So they come from everywhere.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Can I ask? I want to kind of go down chronologically in this next series of questions, if you don't mind. What got you into the sport of wrestling?
Yeah.
Way back when, like, why not golf? Why not volleyball? Why was it wrestling?
Yeah, so interesting story. I'm playing soccer. I was probably 6 or 7, and uniquely, the soccer coach was actually a state champ at the high school for wrestling. And so while he's teaching us to play soccer, and his kids were on my team too, he eventually talked my dad into saying, hey, the short little ornery kid, he might be good at wrestling, so let's take him over to the club he also helped coach at. So when soccer season was over, we started wrestling, I think 6 or 7, somewhere around that age, at Lockport Grapplers, which is North Chicago. And he was part of the coaching staff at that Lockport club. So my soccer coach got me into it because my soccer coach was the high school state champ in Illinois. And so Lockport went okay. I'd say I got better. Year 2, I got really good. I ended up winning regionals in the IKWF Kids Club. But at that time, 1990 or so, they didn't have like a state tournament for the young kids. Like they eventually built some.
Was it just what, regionals then districts?
Regionals and sectionals, and then nothing, right? And then by the time I was starting to get good, I started connecting to Nathan and Israel Martinez, their dad. Israel runs Izzy Style in Chicago. Nathan runs the program his dad used to have at the building in Sheridan, Illinois. And so we started getting into, like, I would call it an elite club. Those kids were state champs, multiple time state champs, and it was just 10, 12 of us just kind of beating each other up in the East Aurora room. And so it kind of took off from there. But it started with my soccer coach, and eventually I went to the same high school, and things kind of took off after the Jose Martinez kind of took over. We did a lot of drilling. A lot of drilling. And I get my notes idea where I take notes on every practice. Like, I will not come to practice without a plan written down because I need something. And I like to get there early just so I can look at the plan while the room's starting to fill up. It's just a weird thing I do. But
Yeah, makes
I got
sense.
it. I got it
Some
from
structure.
Jose. I got it from Jose because he would print out a sheet of our technique for the day or the whole year, really. This was our technique sheet. And back then, you don't have a printer at your house, right? So he probably Xeroxed it somewhere.
You're aging yourself now.
Yeah, it's ancient for sure. And so I really got the notes thing from him because we got better because we drilled a lot. If we were, at that time, you probably heard, like, you got to do it 10,000 times to actually get really good at it, to make it natural. Jose would make us drill it 10,000 times. And we had a sheet because we wanted to go, all right, here's the next thing. We just looked at our sheet and moved on. So I got really good with those guys. But yeah, my soccer coach was the guy that got me into it. I still talk to him. He's still on my Facebook.
No shit.
It was a great story. Yeah.
What was it about the sport of wrestling that kind of like gravitated you towards it? I understand that like this coach was the one that kind of like said, "Hey, this kid might be good for this," but like, walk me through like your first practice.
Yeah, first practice, I probably wasn't any good. I don't remember that first year very much. I know the first tournament, I think I was maybe 2-2 at that tournament.
But you went
Was
back
okay.
next year. So what was your like? Where were you at like internally? Like, I'm not necessarily worried about like the performance. I'm talking about like, you went in for first practice. Maybe you just got beat up, and like, what made you go in day 2, or maybe you didn't get beat up.
Yeah, I don't even remember that. I think I just kept going back, honestly, because my dad kept sending me, and then eventually it turned into like, this is one of the sports where, as the little short, stocky kid, like, you can be really good at this without having to worry about
You're
nine
vertical.
teammates, yeah, do my nine teammates actually commit to this like I do?
Yeah.
Because soccer was kind of like that, but we were good enough to win some stuff at the same time. But if I score 2 goals and the rest of my team just blows it, we still lose that game. And so I think that's probably what took off. The end of the second year, really, like when I won regionals and sectionals, that's when, like, in my brain, I'm like going, this is my sport. It really took 2 years. At the end of the second year, when I won those 2 tournaments, it was like, this is probably going to be what I do.
Do you think you gravitated towards it because of the success and like you were getting enamored with being successful at something?
Definitely at the end of that second year. I think eventually it would have picked up anyway, even if I didn't win those tournaments. But yeah, it just turned into my sport. Like, you're the short, stocky guy. I like being out there on the mat and kind of scrapping. Everybody called me ornery for some reason. I'm sure my dad would agree with that. But it was just one of those things that just, like, it started taking off from there after winning a couple tournaments. And then again, I got into the elite club, and then things just really flourished from there.
When you get into this elite club and you start enrolling with like, multiple time state champions or state medalists, walk me through the difference in that room compared to the rooms you were at before. Because I think, and this is kind of true also with jiu-jitsu, like, you can get a false sense of reality in a skill set really quickly with grappling. If you're exclusively rolling with, let's say you're in wrestling and no one in the room has ever qualified for state. Well, being the big fish in a small pond is not too hard. Or you're rolling jiu-jitsu and, you're the blue belt amongst white belts. You might think, hey, I'm not too bad at this. And then all it takes is that one state medalist, not even a state champion, state medalist, to come in and show you like, oh, shit, there's levels to this.
Yeah.
Walk me through that first day going into like that elite room. Were there nerves? Were you excited? What was the outcome of that first day? Was it like, oh my God, like I have a lot to work on, or no, I belong. This is my room.
Yeah, I got beat up for sure, but it was one of those things where I was already at that point where I think I didn't really care about it. So you
didn't really care about getting beat up.
Not really. No,
Okay.
I was already past that point. I think maybe in that first year, if I showed up in that room getting beat up, I probably would have quit maybe. Israel and Nathan were just so good at that time. And so the thing I remember the most is that there's a level of grittiness in that room where we were going to fight each other, and you could feel it, right? So we drilled a lot, but when we started wrestling live, it was you better fight, right? And so it was a good thing for me to go, okay, like if I get into a battle where it's 3-2 and I got 30 seconds left, I know I was in the right room, that I'm going to go win that match still. And so we had battles. Like, there were some times where I would come in and beat Nathan and Israel. And there was a lot more times where Israel and Nathan would come in and just hammer me too. And so we got really gritty. So that group of kids ended up maybe 10, 12, 20 different state titles in IKWF, and we ended up winning maybe 12, 15 high school state titles just from that one room we initially started. And so that's where, if I go back in my coaching career and I go, okay, what do I need to accomplish with my club for that to repeat itself? And I think we're getting there. And we got this elite club going on during the school year too, where only kids can, eighth grade and under can come. So again, I've invited all the kids clubs that kind of come in and coach Corley, and the Francis Howell coaches let me do that. And so all the kids from Wentzville, St. Charles, wherever you're from, you can come in on Wednesdays as long as you're going to work hard and they're at least well enough to listen the whole 2 hours. We bring them in. We'll let them come in. So we're still doing that right now.
Throughout the course of your career, I'm sure you've had many coaches. And for me, my issue with my varying coaching is different disciplines. Yeah. So I had a wrestling coach, and then I had Mike Rogers as a coach, and then I had different coaches for different things, right? But because you've kind of stayed disciplined in your martial art being wrestling, I'm sure you had a Little League coach and a high school coach and a college coach and then a coach after that, and then finally you became a coach. How much of your game is shaped by the various coaches you've had, while also understanding that, like, I want to be careful how I word this question. There were levels for a reason, right? Like your high school coach was a high school coach and not a college coach for a reason.
Yeah,
but
sure.
You can still pick and pull some things from them, right?
Yeah, sure.
How much do you look back at your various coaches and pull from them, or maybe don't pull from some? And is it something that you're actively thinking about when you're setting up your curriculum, or when you decide something like, my coach used to put on gear and wrestle, so I'm going to put on gear and wrestle?
Yeah. So I think my Jose Martinez and Ed Geezy, I think those guys could have done just fine in college. And I think some of the stuff that they did for me still work for me. So I get the notes and the drilling, lots of repetitions from Jose. From Ed, I get a lot of the sparring and putting your stuff on and scrapping with these guys. And really, if I go back and just kind of look at all my coaching, it probably just initially started with them, and I still do all those things. Like nothing left. The curriculum and the stuff that's working now, when I start looking at like the Olympic finals and kind of reviewing all those matches, well, that might change a little bit. But the core of like how I run things and how I do things, that's from them. It still is. When I got to college, I went to many different places just from immaturity. So I left Division I schools just from grades and those types of things. And so I had 4 different coaches in college, and I had multiple coaches at each of those schools because they had assistants and those types of things. And I still pull a lot from all of them. I just go back to all those things, and I feel like my coaching style is kind of a mutt. Like when you mix everything in there and I go, okay, like what pieces really were good, what pieces weren't good. And then I start taking kids like a Luke Lillidahl, who's a world champ, and I go, what kind of pieces are working for him that are back from my background? And I try to give it to the kids in our club now too. Not everything comes with, right? I'm not going to teach kids how to spladle. I'm not going to teach kids how to do high flyers.
How do you teach a kid to stop splading?
Yeah.
I got a kid who's pinned himself more times than I can
Staying
count.
good basics.
I tell him, Andrew, can you please stop? And he's like, Coach, when I get it, we're all gonna.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, but you're 0 for 10, my man. I love the
10.
enthusiasm, but like if at first you don't succeed, sometimes stop.
You might want to stop.
I was like, who taught you that? My previous coach. I want to find who that coach was. Like, why did you do this?
Yeah.
To an 8th grader, like teaching him spladles.
And
how about you teach him a proper single leg?
You got to appreciate all coaches because they
Fair,
were trying. They were trying.
First day, I'm going to do like a leg riding seminar, and no one knows how to do a takedown.
Exactly.
Great.
Exactly. You can't even stay in your stance.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question out of curiosity? You said that your first year in college, you kind of hopped around because of like the discipline with grades and stuff like that, which I kind of find oxymoronic because wrestling was what made me the man I am in terms of like not just like my academics and like my hunger for, professional success and all these other things, but like, before wrestling, I was kind of like I likened myself to like a dog looking for a ball. Like if you do something in front of me, I'd start chasing, right? And then after wrestling, it was just more like putting on the blinders and like saying, hey, there's a distinct goal, go out and achieve it. And I think there's no coincidence that the day I started wrestling, the trajectory of my life also changed.
Yeah, sure.
But you're telling me that once you got to that college level, some of that discipline kind of escaped you? Like
so I don't think the wrestling discipline escaped me. I think the wrestling was always there. I was in the room working hard. I was in the weight room. I did everything the coaches asked me to do there. I would tell you that I started college young. I was 17 when I got into college. I would say the immaturity was still there, and University of Illinois is my first school I was at. I did not discipline myself to go to class. I was sleeping in. I would skip class, and eventually you skip 2 classes, you feel bad to go, and then you just stop going. So the wrestling was there for sure. I was getting better there. I had great coaches there. Mark Johnson, Carl Perry, who was great. He's NCAA champ for Illinois. And so I had good coaches there. Wrestling was always good. So there's the immaturity that kind of followed me all through college. So fast forward a year, I had redshirted. Grades didn't go well. Definitely not the second semester. And I go to Iowa Central Community College so I can finish 2 years and get my grades back up and then go back to Division I. And so
was that tough for you though, mentally, to have to
yeah, for sure.
Do you think that was the kick in the butt that you needed?
I don't think I got the right kick in the butt. I think there were some other things, and we'll finish the story, and then you can ask me if I got the kick in the butt yet.
Oh, forgive me.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's not there yet. So I go to Iowa Central, and I do feel a little bit bad. I'm going in from like a program that would give you gear, that you had a strength and conditioning coach, and you go to a junior college that has none of that stuff. Like you're going to do it yourself, and you're probably just going to wrestle. You're not going to lift weights. We didn't have the strength training program at the time. Like nobody cared about it. We just wrestled all the time.
You didn't have the same resources.
Yeah, and it was in Iowa, so like they had the Iowa mentality without all the extra stuff, right? So like we're going to grind all day, every day, kind of wrestle hard the whole time, which was good. I got a lot out of it, and I got really good there too, in different ways, right? My shape was good. We literally would fight each other at practice. That was like the mentality. So I would go out, and if you want to have a fist fight with me in a wrestling match, I'm going to have a fist fight with you. I don't care if you're Division I, Division II, Division III. And so school went good there. I won a national title there. At that time, I had Cain Velasquez there with me. Woo! So Cain went to school there. This is the community college that has a bunch of UFC fighters that came out of. So Cain Velasquez was there with me. My brother goes there 2 years later, and John Jones is there, Colby Covington, Joe Soto, those types of guys. And so Pat Downey was there too. So lots of those UFC fighters came out of that junior college. And so there is a fighting mentality just from being in Iowa for wrestling. They love wrestling. So that goes well. I ended up getting a full ride to go to University of Missouri. And so that got me into Missouri. And then that was going really well. I think when I dropped down to 33 from 41 at Iowa Central, 33 was a tough drop for Iowa Central too. So I had some problems cutting weight the second year. Still ended up getting to nationals and winning nationals at that time. I go to Mizzou, and Mizzou, I go back to like the gear, the strength training program, the nutrition, and I was getting huge. I mean, you would weigh in at 33, and like 2 days later on Monday, you'd be 54, 55, 56, and you have to do that every week to get it back down.
That's awful.
That's
for your body.
different than one fight a year for UFC fighters, right? And so
you were doing that consistently?
Yeah. And first semester was okay. While the muscle was getting built and like the strength and conditioning stuff was making me big. And again, maturity thing, like I should have started talking to the coach.
What was the diet like, if you don't mind me asking? Still eating clean?
Yeah, diet was pretty clean, but it was basically dorm room food.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know.
As clean as you could.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't have the football nutritionist that they had at the time. I think now probably all the sports kind of have all that stuff just from equity things and those.
I think the technology and like proper hydration and diet has also changed. I remember, dude, the way I tell kids to cut weight now in high school. First of all, cutting 3 or 4 pounds is nothing. No. But it is everything to kids that have never cut weight.
100%.
And my whole thing is like I feel kind of weird telling kids to cut weight. I always tell myself like if it's reasonable based on the effort that they've already put in, like if this kid's miserable at practice because he skipped lunch and he's talking about how he has to cut 4 more pounds, I would actually tell him like, hey, stop,
don't do
bump
it.
up a weight class.
Yeah, don't do it.
You're going to hit puberty. You're going to be changing. And if it's like, coach, you know, he's been scarfing down Cheetos all day. I got 2 pounds to lose. I'm like, all right, let's get fucking out there, right?
Yeah.
But the way that we tell them to do it now compared to when I was young is literally night and day. We were told like the Dan Gable, like, you know, get comfortable being uncomfortable, fast, don't drink water, all these things. I even had a wrestling coach tell me that I need to take quick showers because the water can soak into my skin.
I've heard that.
So I remember 15-year-old Arion was like, Mom, I would take like 30-second showers. So insane. Compared to fast forward, when I'm cutting weight for my fights, my main way for cutting weight was hot baths. Yeah. I'm just like, and every time I'm sitting in a hot bath, I'm like, I wish I would have known this in high school.
Soaking up this water.
Yeah, dude. so insane.
It's stupid.
I'm glad I'm glad I did it. I just wouldn't do it again. Does that make
100%.
sense?
Yeah, no, I agree. I'll put my sauna suit out and sit in a sauna and just work out for an hour just to get sweaty. I love it.
I think
love
it's
it.
therapeutic and good when you're not cutting weight.
Yeah.
The problem is
When you are cutting weight.
yeah,
it's a whole different monster.
How rough was it when you were cutting weight? Did you ever go to like a public sauna to cut weight?
Yeah.
That is the worst.
Yeah. I
Because then
remember
you
the
get
smells.
you get some guy with like a jug of water, and he's doing it the proper way. God
Yeah.
bless him.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm gonna hydrate while I
Except
dehydrate.
he doesn't have any clothes on.
Yeah, yeah. That is wild to me.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I'm a very comfortable guy, but there's no way on God's green earth I'm gonna
no
like
way.
free ball
No
it
way.
in some sauna,
You have
especially
shorts?
a public
Yeah,
one.
you have shorts or a towel, like put it on.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Anyway, I'm sorry, we went down a different path.
Yeah.
Wear pants to a public sauna,
Yeah,
please. Public
wear
service
pants.
announcement. Jesus. So you're making that cut now weekly.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing about wrestling season, right? For me,
Yeah.
so I walk around, the heaviest I ever got off camp or anything like that was about like 175, 180. And I would cut down to 135, but I also had like, hey, Arion, you got to fight 3 months from now.
Yeah, sure.
So it's like, okay, the first month was just dialing in, getting back to a training regimen, just cutting out soda and alcohol. I would drop 10 pounds easy.
Yep.
Then the next 4 months was getting the diet clean and everything, another 20 pounds. By the time we got to the month of the fight, I had maybe 15 pounds to lose.
Sure.
And then anybody who knows is like, you cut the 10
Yeah,
the
just the
week
water
of.
after that, yeah.
But dude,
Yeah.
going from 33 to like anywhere above 45, honestly, that's going to be a big cut back
For sure.
come next week.
Yeah.
Explain that roller coaster to me, because I think that's going to wreck you, but
That was
obviously
miserable.
it didn't.
Yeah, well, first semester, again, I wasn't that big yet. Like, I think the weight training had started, like, compounding. Like, I was getting big and strong. Like, if you put me at 49, 41, like, I would have been okay. I would have been big enough for it. So it kept building, and then second semester rolls around, and probably right around national duels in January, where that was my last good cut, where I did well at national duels, beat a couple national finalists, national champs at that national duel tournament. And second day I got a weigh-in, we got to wrestle Oklahoma State, which was number one school in the country at that point, 2003-ish, when Tyron Woodley and Ben Askren were there with me. And that's where I started really feeling it, right? So the first day I make weight, second day I need to make weight. So at the end of the day, I've wrestled all day. I haven't done much, right? I didn't have time to go like gorge on a buffet or anything. And I checked my weight at the end of the day after 4 matches, warming up and doing all those things. And I'm already 9 pounds over.
Jesus.
Right? So weigh-ins, you wrestle 4 matches, you warm up for 4 matches, you're still 9 pounds over in a day. And I go, oh man, this is like, my body's just soaking this stuff back up.
You're also, when you say you're wrestling 4 matches, you're wrestling 4 very high level matches.
Yeah.
You're not doing like 4 matches like,
Yeah.
Against like some nobodies.
That's right.
Everybody's a killer.
Yeah, I wrestled the national finalist at the 4th match, national finalist, and beat him. And then I gotta cut weight all night.
So you can't recover properly.
Yeah,
come day
I think
2.
I think I finally went to bed at 3:30 or 4 and made the weight because again, national duels, I make weight the Saturday morning. We wrestle Oklahoma State in the afternoon.
What would you do to cut weight? What, run, sauna suit?
Sauna suit.
Sauna.
Run. Yeah, which is illegal, but we don't need to tell anybody that.
Got to cheat a little bit, or else
Yeah.
Jesus died for nothing.
Yeah, and I did okay in that match because I had basically 8 hours to recover, so I was okay. But
Were sauna suits illegal back then as well?
yeah, I think it was kind of frowned upon. You were going to wear it at a tournament.
Because I know certain things are illegal now based on like history.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was did you feel like you had to hide it?
Yeah, for sure.
Really? Okay,
Yeah.
no shit.
I think
Dude, I wore trash bags.
97, 98 when they did the water certifications because
Yeah.
those 2 or 3 guys died, Michigan wrestler and some other guys. Then they kind of made that illegal.
Can I say something? When
Yeah.
we were in high school, trash bags underneath all your
yeah.
clothes, regular.
100%.
Regular.
Yeah,
I
me
mean,
too.
I'm pretty sure my mom like hated it because I would like take a trash bag every day with me to practice, and she's like, where are all these trash bags going? I didn't want to tell her.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, oh man, I don't know. And this is kind of
Does it
crazy.
have a cutout
an
hole in it?
It was an
and
80 pack
some
a week
arms in
ago. Yeah. She looks at my laundry and like only the sleeves are sweaty.
Yeah.
Like, what's going on?
What's happening?
Listen, dude, Arion was making weight. No, that's
yeah.
funny though. I never thought I had to hide it. I just put it under my clothes anyway. But now that you're saying that, maybe there was something to it.
Maybe, yeah. Yeah, so second semester after that, that went well. That tournament was fine. I lost to the 3-time national champ from Oklahoma State by a point. And so after that, weight cutting was not working out. I think I made it 2 more times, and I wrestled like crap because they were hour weigh-ins for dual meets. And at that time, I don't think colleges were at that point yet, but their schedule is like a duel and then a tournament, like almost every week. I think they've scaled back because they understand like the training. We need to peak each other, right? We need to peak our guys. And so, yeah, that didn't go well. I transferred out after that semester and went to Missouri Valley, which is an NAI school nearby, and won a national title for them that year. And
Wait,
so,
you transferred out because you couldn't cut weight?
yeah,
Or,
well,
sorry, you couldn't cut weight, but you couldn't make that weight?
lots of immaturity out of the weight cutting too. Like I stopped going to classes. I was drowning and trying to weight cut the whole semester, right? Because we got March for nationals, and then I cut weight, and then he made me wrestle off with one of the other guys, which the guy deserved it because I wasn't making weight for lots of the tournaments, and so I cut weight our way and didn't wrestle really well, and so that he gets to win. He gets to go to Big 12s and go to nationals and those types of things. So yeah, I transfer out after that. Go to Missouri Valley, win a national title there. So my national titles are at junior college and NAI schools. And so again, when I say like my coaching career is a mutt, I have so many different aspects of the sport from different Division I schools, junior colleges, NAI schools, about how they wrestled, how they trained at the different pieces of those things. And I can almost look at my kids in the room like, once they get to be a senior, I can see, okay, you're probably going to be a Division II kid, Division I kid, Division III kid, depending on where you're going to go.
Is it just their wrestling acumen that goes into that, or them as an individual as well?
Yeah, them as an individual. Like, what do they really care about the sport? Are they watching videos? Were they trying to make world teams? Like right now, when you go to Division I, like most of the kids who get in NAL deals won world championships. Like they're not just one-time state champs, right? So our world has progressed where those kids are getting those full scholarships and going there.
Can I ask you a question that is kind of loaded, but I'm interested in your opinion? Do you think the popularity of MMA has hurt or helped wrestling? But this is the part where the question's loaded. Early stage, I would say like, little league, high school, college, and then Olympic. Like, do you think it's helped or hurt little league, high school, college wrestling, and Olympic wrestling in separate?
Good question.
I have an answer to that, but I would love to hear yours first.
Okay, so I think anybody under college, I don't think it's hurt it. Olympics, I think it might have hurt it. Just because, like, you get done with college, your 4-year degree, and you go, all right, well, money's in UFC and MMA, right? You don't get the money for wrestling unless you are an Olympic champ.
Not even that.
Yeah.
The level of competition is lower.
Yeah, sure.
Like, dude, going to the Olympics and wrestling there compared to, like, having your first amateur or pro fight locally.
Yeah, sure.
Completely different
sure.
spectrums of competition.
Sure. Yeah. So I think just the Olympics. I don't feel like it's hurt anything else. I think some of those guys that win NCAA championships and the goal was to get to MMA, like that was part of their training maybe. I think NIL deals and some of the other things going on in college sports is probably changing that platform just a little bit. But if you don't get an NIL deal and stay around for like an Olympic cycle for 4 years, you're probably going to go into MMA if that's what you wanted to do instead of coaching. Right. So I don't think it's hurt anything in college. I think after that for the Olympics, I think people are cycling out of the Olympic cycle and going into MMA if that's what they want to do a little bit earlier.
Do you think it's isolated to just the U.S. or do you think it's a global phenomenon?
I think you're going to start seeing it globally because you're starting to see it with those Dagestani guys and those Russians. Like they're leaving faster.
Yeah.
Most of the time you would see like a Sergey and a Satiev stay in for like 4 different Olympic cycles. That's 16 years. Right? So now you're seeing those guys go one cycle, win the Olympics, and then maybe transition out or at least start thinking about it. So it's probably tougher to keep them in.
I'll tell you where there's also money to be made as well is just a training partner. I know that there's a lot of guys that put in camps where they're bringing in these Olympic level wrestlers specifically for a competitor.
Yep.
And I mean, I like that the ability to generate different revenue streams exists. And I think that wrestling is such a beautiful sport that if you can generate any sort of financial freedom through the sport of wrestling, I'm for that, right? Sure. I just want to make sure, and I actually agree with your sentiment, and that's why I don't really feel bad that MMA is really becoming more and more mainstream.
Sure.
I do worry at the highest level because I feel like some of these people are kind of getting pulled by the financial benefits.
Sure.
But I actually think I can tell you from our school, I have like 5 or 6 kids that actually only do wrestling because they go to MMA gyms.
Yeah,
or like they do jujitsu
like that.
so the it's anecdotal, right? I don't have like, some sort of grand data set that I can pull from, but
Uh-huh.
I know for a fact that 6 of the kids that come to our practices come because their MMA coaches are saying, "Oh, you're in high school, you need to do wrestling."
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
So I do love that. I think it is it's an attribute that helps lower, but then it becomes a detriment as you get higher.
Sure. I agree. I agree.
Which I don't know how I feel about that because I like to see, I'm Team America. I want to see us win as much gold as possible.
Yeah,
You know
sure.
what I mean?
Uh-huh.
But as long as it's kind of like a universal detriment, like it's hurting everybody, then I'm like,
Yeah,
okay.
I think it's starting to get around for sure.
Yeah, I think it is too. I think if in the past 10 years, if you were already committed to wrestling, you were going to be there. Like I remember there was talks about like Jordan Burroughs possibly doing it. I was like, when I heard that, I was like, there's no fucking way. There's
Yeah,
no
no,
way.
no.
And there was no way, right?
Yeah.
That being said, I think if he wanted to go, even now, he would be highly successful.
Yeah, I think he'd be fine.
I think he's a super athlete, and I think he'd beat the shit out of a lot of people on this planet.
Yep, I agree.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
If he ever wanted to. But anyway, sorry, I'm going to bring it back now because I did also want to ask another question regarding. You were talking about how you could see some of these kids, like their senior year, and depict like who's going to be, NAIA, D2, D1. Can you elaborate the difference for me? Because I never wrestled in college. When I went to UMSL, we didn't have a wrestling team.
Sure.
And that was in a large part like, okay, like there goes my wrestling career. And that's how I got into MMA, right? So I don't necessarily know the difference between an NAIA, D2, D1, Olympic hopeful. I've wrestled with a lot of animals, and I can tell you this guy is on another level compared to this guy. But if you put, 3 guys blindfolded me, I wouldn't be able to tell you who's D1, D2. I'll tell you who's better, but I wouldn't know how to measure that.
Yeah. Well, I can feel it for the most part, right? So like if I wrestle Luke Little, like everything I do with him it's hard to do because he's so good at positioning, and he travels all over the country and tries to get to places where he can get better. That's why he's at Penn State, because I know he wants to win at the highest level. And JUCO, I think it's in its own monster. Usually that's grades, right? So that's got
You might have some beasts in there.
yeah, and that's kind of its own monster, right? So you can't really say like this kid could be really good and be a Division I athlete, but his grades are just not there. He's got to go the JUCO route, or maybe sometimes NAIA, depending on what the school is, like curriculum and how you can get in and those types of things. And then there's the kids that don't do anything in the summer, don't want to go to Fargo, or maybe go to Fargo, but they're just enjoying the camaraderie with the kids and don't really want to win that thing. So you can kind of tell, like he might go NAI Division III, Division II. He's not going to be a Division I kid, right? So you can kind of feel that. I think that NAI Division II, Division III, they're all kind of like you can mix and match them, and like you wouldn't be able to tell a difference in there. You can tell a difference between that Division I kid that really wants to be there. The JUCO kid he might be just as good as Division I kid. His grades are there. That guy's in the middle, you can kind of tell, maybe they need to go that route. But I also think like if they really want to do it, there's many kids that never won state that go Division I route that you can look at their story. They won national titles or did really well in Division I. So just depends, right? The grittiness of like being able to lose and get beat up, like that's got to be there. If you're going to be that, you didn't win state and you're going to go to Division I school, can you get beat up and take the lumps and kind of get better, right? And there's plenty of kids that Tim Hartung is a great example. Never won a state title in Minnesota, goes to University of Minnesota, wins 2 national titles for him, right? And so you can't really tell that much, but if I look at the grittiness of like that elite room I had in Illinois and like wrestling with Luke, and I can kind of feel like everything is tough to do. Like you got to be in shape to even drill and spar with them. Like there's a difference for sure. Yeah.
What do you think is the biggest attribute for a successful wrestler? Like if you were to look at your own career or the careers of the people that have been around you, or some more prolific careers.
Yeah.
What do you think tends to be like the number one asset to someone who is highly successful in this sport?
I think there's a couple things. They love to learn about the sport and get better. They like to compete, and that's a huge thing. And then I would tell you that person probably has a village around them. Like their parents are a great support system. They got great coaches. They got great partners. They probably have multiple coaches and multiple partners. And so there's a huge support system around them that I think that has to be there. Nobody does that on their own. Even Cal Sanderson, greatest in the world, undefeated, wins an Olympic title, greatest probably coach in the world when he's done.
Dude,
right?
yeah.
He's
When you
got
brought
a
up Penn
village
State, I
around
was
him.
like, dude.
He's got a village around him. He had 4 brothers. He's got his dad, his mom. Like they're all
Eat,
behind him.
live, sleep, breathe
Yeah.
the sport of wrestling.
Yeah, you have a
And it
village around
shows.
you. That's what I don't think people get. Like when you have a fight camp, you have a village around you because you build it, right? Or you already have the village around you in your training.
No, the gym changes, right?
Yeah.
Like if you got a fight coming up,
That's
then
right.
whatever I need, it kind of goes away.
That's right.
You got a fight in 6 weeks? All right, what do you need? Oh, you
Yeah.
guys is a wrestler? All right, you're going to do wrestling
That's
with
right.
me today. And
That's
we're
right.
going to cater. Everyone's kind of catering to you, and then you're going to give it back whenever it's time for
That's
my
right.
fight camp.
And I think our guys that are winning state titles right now in Ironman and Super 32s and World Championships as high schoolers that are getting better and better and winning college opens now, they understand it. I think they got the village around them, and they have to have that, and they have to have the right village around them. Like if a piece doesn't fit, then we got to let the piece go, bring in somebody else to put it together. So I also see more and more people going to the prep schools and leaving the high school scene and kind of doing the prep thing too right now. You got Valiant Prep, and you got Wyoming Seminary and Malvern Prep, and all these people going prep because there's less rules and restrictions on them going to big tournaments or going overseas or going to a freestyle tournament in the middle of the season to win, New York AC Club or go to Sunkist or win a U.S. Open title and then come back and finish preps, right? You can't do that in Illinois. You can't do that in Missouri.
Yeah.
Just because of the dates and all the strict regulations they have.
Can I ask a question? Why does that exist? Whenever I wanted to do my summer classes, I was capped to how many I could do. The reason I did 2 days a week was because Misha was like, oh, you're an assistant coach, and this is like through your
right.
wrestling program, so you can only have, I think it was like 16 practices on the off season.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking like, I'm going to give up my time for free to these kids. Who are you to tell me how much time I can give up?
Yeah, 100%.
If I want to do it 7 days a week, fuck off.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
don't want to hear it from you.
Yeah.
I thought it was really weird. Like, what is this?
Well,
And by the way, it's not like they're gonna get some sort of competitive advantage. I'm trying to get kids to catch up to the other kids that had the little league and stuff like that. Like, is that not built into the equation? How about how many practices they've had in total?
Well, I think you got the right idea. I think it's like the less fortunate kids that aren't by a coach that's going to do that. Maybe that was the start of that. But I think we let maybe too much governance get in it when we started making weird rules where, hey, this kid may be going to like this private camp in the summer, and then he went from a public school and the private school recruited him kind of thing, or it's equity. It's just a mess.
I always thought of high school as like preparatory for life.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
And
Should
so
be.
is sports.
Should be.
So like you're actively limiting the preparation for life. It's just like if you told me you can't do more than 100 because of like, they're going through puberty and we don't want to do a whole lot of wear and tear on the body, I'm here for that conversation. I'm here for the number.
Yeah.
16 is a stupid number.
Yeah.
If you said 50 and you had like some science behind it and you're like, hey, because the stress on the body and they're going through a lot, okay, I'm here for that conversation.
Yeah.
But when they told me like, no, you can't do more than 16, I go, come again?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
First of all, and I hate to say it this way, who's checking?
Nobody.
Exactly.
Unless there's some other coach that complains about it or a parent.
But here's what I'm going to say is like, what's the first rule of any sort of legislation? Never pass a law that you can't enforce.
Yeah.
So good luck.
You can't enforce it.
By the way, I never did more than 16 practices.
Yeah. Or they have the weird dead week, like where they just don't let any of the coaches practice. Like one week is dead. Like what does that do? What does that help with?
Or the fact that girls start a week earlier than boys because their state is 2 days prior.
Yeah.
I'm like,
a whole week. Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes no
What?
sense.
Like, what are we doing here?
I had this kid all summer. I don't care.
Yeah. Yeah. I just thought it was weird because like when I was in high school, it was like the more we could wrestle, the better. We did like, during Thanksgiving and Christmas break, practices weren't optional.
Yeah.
Hey, we're practicing on these days. If you're out of town for family, okay.
Yeah.
But if you're in town, I'll see you on that Friday after Christmas or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now it's like we just have to get so many approvals and so much stuff. Shit has changed so drastically since I was a kid, and that was only a decade ago that I was in high school.
That's right.
So I can't imagine what it was like when you were in high school. It's probably the Wild West compared to me.
Wild West for sure. Like we didn't have any of those rules. I can tell you that's probably why Mike calls me independent. I stay independent because I don't want to deal with any of those
You don't
rules.
want to deal with it.
I don't want to deal with any of it. Like I can go into a high school room or kids club room and teach a practice, and I don't have any stipulations on it whatsoever, right? So it doesn't bother me. I can do summer stuff. I've been asked to coach and assistant coach and coach at different high schools around the area, and I just keep telling them the same thing. I can benefit you guys more by not doing that and doing the summer thing and this private thing with your kids. Just send them over to me.
Can I piggyback on that?
Yeah.
They have a shortage of referees, coaches, and all these other things.
Yeah.
when they told me that I couldn't do more than 16 practices because I was an assistant coach, my very first thought was like, okay, I quit.
Yeah.
I quit.
That's why.
During this summer, I quit.
That's why.
I'm not an assistant coach. And then when wrestling season comes in, I'll throw in the application
That's
again.
right, yeah.
Like, what are we doing here? This
Yeah.
is so stupid.
Yeah, you can get around it.
Yeah, it's like, well, I'm not an assistant. And by the way, that's what I did. And I can have as many practices as I want.
Yeah.
So it's just so stupid.
mess.
You're actively inhibiting kids. I'm not a fan of it. Anyway, forgive me.
And I think that's why, like, I go back to, like, I don't have an ego, and I let all people come. Like, I don't care where you're from. I don't care your background. I don't care if you have no resources in your club or you do have resources in your club. If you want to come here, then come here and let's figure it out. Let's get better. Let's learn the sport. Let's love it.
It's also a sport that's like difficult to congregate to do.
Yeah.
Like you can go to a public park and they got a basketball hoop.
Yeah, 100%.
So like the basketball teams can go play as much as they really want, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
But like, how many places have wrestling mats?
Not many.
And the people and shoes and all this. You kind of have to get the resources together to do wrestling.
Yeah.
So I've never seen wrestling mats laid out at a public park and guys are just like doing double legs. You know what I mean?
Or you can go to the high school and jump in the football field and play football today if you want.
Yes,
to. It's open. Go for it.
Dude, I don't know. It's just weird to me. I not a big fan.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, I'm going to kind of pivot a little bit because I want to ask this question before I forget, before we get back to your story. You brought up NIL, and I think I think we're in agreement in respect to MMA's shadow on wrestling, where it kind of helps at the lower level. It brings a lot of more respect and notoriety to the sport of wrestling, especially when you see how beneficial it is to MMA. However, at the highest level, it can kind of be a detriment because of the chase of the financial.
Sure.
NIL, the name, image, likeness legislation that was passed. When I was speaking with David Mirikatani, he told me that it has made not just wrestling, but college sports immensely more difficult for coaches to properly coach.
Sure.
And it has created this very big like poaching market. 100%. He was telling me specifically that when the NCAAs were happening, and David's like, you know, like a well-networked guy, so he's like texting a bunch of these coaches and calling a bunch of these coaches and talking to people. And I don't want to say the schools that he said because he said that off the record, but let's say there were certain schools where like a guy would come off the mats, just won a championship or whatever, and then he would congratulate the coach like, "Hey man, good job," and the coach would text David back and be like, 3 other schools already offered this kid like hundreds of thousands of dollars to switch to their school next year.
That's right.
And it's just like, what are we doing? What do you think of name, image, likeness, high level, and then with respect to the sport of wrestling?
Yeah, so I think initially the idea probably made a lot of sense and maybe it was a benefit, right? Kids are making the NCAA, Big 10s, Big 12s, lots of money. Yeah, you should probably get a little bit of that cut back to you. I think when you start adding in the transfer portal, it's not as strict anymore.
Can you what is the transfer portal?
Yeah, so NCAA and NAI has this too, but transfer portal has some regulations maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago. Like when you got in the transfer portal, your current school had to release you. Otherwise, you had to sit out for a year at the next school.
Oh, wow.
That's no longer the case.
Okay.
And then NAL came in. And so now the transfer portal is open. You can go into the transfer portal anytime you want. The previous college coach that you were at cannot stop you from transferring, can't tell you to sit out. And then now you got all these NIL deals where what you're seeing now, I think, is like 5 to 10 big schools that only have that kind of money to throw it around. And I think the other schools are probably getting left behind a little bit.
Yeah.
And then add in the transfer portal now with all this money for the 5, 10 schools, and most of those schools are actually pulling in lots of those transfers.
Were the changes to the transfer portal and the passage of NIL, were they one and the same, or were they two separate things that just happened at the same time?
Transfer happened earlier, like 2 or 3 years earlier, and then the NIL deal started coming in. And if you had talked to some college coaches, there's actually some profit sharing with the NCAA legislation going on now that eventually there's going to be profit sharing with the revenue with all the student athletes too. So you got like this whole mess of things coming on at once that I think that's probably going to hurt definitely the non-revenue generating sports, right? And then last year they passed you don't have to cap your scholarships at whatever it is for your sport. It was 30. Like you can have 30 scholarship athletes on your program. And I don't know that too much because I didn't dig into it, but you got like Campbell, for instance, dropped their paid scholarships down to 3 from 9.9 instead of 30 because they could decide that they got to push money elsewhere. So I think it's going to hinder wrestling at some point where I think the coaches need a shift, which they should have been doing already, where they're going to be a CEO and they're fundraising and building donors and those types of things, especially if you're a smaller school.
Damn. Then what do you think about NIL with respect specifically to the sport of wrestling? Because I'm actually torn.
Yeah, I mean, I think they should get paid for it, but at some point, they're adolescents, they're 18 to 24, and I know how I was immature. You give me $500,000, it's going to be a mess, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know about that. I think maybe you put in an annuity and they get it after they graduate or something else happens, right? Where instead of you getting paid, and I was talking to a coach this summer too, where most of his athletes are getting paid $30,000-$40,000 a month at this point, like all of them, for whatever it is. And I didn't ask details, but whatever that is, like you start looking at $30,000-$40,000 going into a college student's account every year, like.
Dude, they're going to be rolling up in BMWs and Mercedes,
or
going to their
wasting it
math
on
class.
Nonsense instead of paying for their classes and their loans and all that stuff.
I do like the idea of possibly putting it in some sort of like stored. I like the idea of an annuity or maybe even like a trust.
Yeah.
That says like, hey,
Yeah.
this is your money
When you graduate.
and then maybe not even after you graduate. Let's say like after you hit the age of 25, like
Sure.
25. Let's say if you redshirt, whatever.
Sure.
Like, but when you hit 25, so like even maybe if you graduate at like 22, 23, you still can't touch it until the age of 25. So you can't just immediately go bougie and maybe you still kind of keep some of this discipline. But then again, then there's the part of me that's like, okay, when do we turn into Big Brother and we're stopping people from
it's
like
their money.
It's their money.
Yeah.
It's tough. I'm torn on it personally.
Sure.
Because I do think if this was football, I think NIL for football is like horrendous.
Yeah, sure.
Because these guys already had an avenue to go into an NFL
100%.
and still do the identical sport, but for millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Where wrestlers didn't necessarily have that avenue. So I like the idea that these college athletes, they might not make enough money to be set, but
Sure.
I like the thought of like, okay, now you have an education, you have a skill set, you have some sort of like a diploma that can get you into professional America.
Yeah, sure.
And you got a good lump sum of cash. And as long as you're not stupid with that money, it might not be a lot of money. It might not be enough money to like ride off into the sunset.
Yeah, sure.
But now maybe you can buy your first house with that.
Yeah,
and
I
then
agree.
there you
Yeah.
go. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I like that idea.
Yeah.
I know that there's always two sides to every coin, and there's a little bit of bad with the good.
Yeah,
and I
sure.
think you said the same thing that David said, where essentially you have like 5 or 6 schools that are now going to be on the podium at every NCAA tournament for every weight class.
Yeah, you're buying your way into it.
Yep. Because you just have the funds to do it.
Yep.
I don't know. Do you think the sport of wrestling is on an ascension or descension, or do you think it's plateaued? What do you see from the sport of wrestling right now?
I mean, quality and how good we are at the high school level, college level, and the Olympics, I think we're on an upward trajectory. I think you got so many high school kids right now in this last group of like 3 to 4 years where those guys can win college opens, and they're showing you they can win college opens. They're making the Olympic trials at high school at age level. Like it's up there for sure. And we're doing great at the Olympics and the age group world championships. We're doing great. But who knows what it's going to turn into, right? Because the NIL thing can just transition that thing completely and turn it into garbage.
How many years has it been in now? Like what, 4 years?
I think
3
so,
years?
somewhere around there.
How many years do you think it would take for us to really like see the fruits kind of be born?
And probably a couple more, but I think they need to go back and review like what are they actually doing with it? Because if you ask college coaches, not everybody all even understands how to use it and how to deal with it. And again, like the big schools with the big money are running away with it right now.
Yeah.
Like if you get in the transfer portal, you're going to see Iowa, Michigan, all those big schools that have a lot of money that are going to pull those kids in. You look at Iowa last year, brings in two Arizona State kids. They both got $500,000 to transfer to Iowa. Right?
Jesus.
So for 1 year, I think they only have 1 year left. So you're talking
$500,000.
Yeah, to come to Iowa, and they can poach them because the donors can talk to those kids and the coaches can't. So the donors go recruit for them, right? So that's a mess. But you also have like the huge NIL deals in high school, and what's that going to turn into when eventually there's no money and the school is going broke and we have to get rid of wrestling, because that's probably that's on the horizon, I think, especially for smaller schools.
Yeah. David said something along the lines of that as well, where you're going to start seeing the leaders kind of really pull ahead, and what it's going to do is kind of kill. You're going to get to the point where less people will get the opportunity to wrestle at the highest level because there will just simply be a recession of opportunity.
Yeah,
There'll be
sure.
less schools with less wrestling programs. Therefore, less scholarships are going to go out to these high schoolers. Therefore, less people will wrestle in college, ultimately.
Yeah, ultimately. I also think that when you come there for the money as a kid, does that change the trust with you
For
as the wrestler
sure.
and the coach,
For sure.
right? Because then I go, all right.
I mean, I can only speak for myself. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I would have a problem with it, right? Like you only had to come here if we gave you $1 million, and like, can I trust you to like do the work? Do you trust me with my leadership and what my plan is for the program? Am I going to lose you if you
The
win
second something goes wrong, or the second you think I'm
the
incompetent,
next school
or
gives you 3 million instead
Yeah.
of 2, right? Am I going to lose you? So
everything could go right. You win an NCAA championship, and then someone else offers you more
Yeah.
money, and you're like, all right, thanks, guys.
and I got
Peace
to
out.
go. Yeah, exactly. So I think that changes the landscape of recruiting too.
Do you think that? Do you think that also kind of breeds a little bit more of the competitive fire within like a training staff and coaches to say that like where before they may have gotten a little lazy or cut some corners,
Yeah.
now they're also on edge because any of these kids can at any moment bounce as well. So every day, Monday through Sunday, they're having to give their best as well.
I agree. Yeah, absolutely.
It's interesting,
Agreed.
isn't
It's
it?
weird, yeah. Or I got to I have to give my best at practice. I also have to do my best with donors and CEOs and those types of people I need to bring in money from, right? And if I don't have a big donor like Oklahoma State and all the Oklahoma schools have the Paycom guy, he gives millions a year to all those programs, built stadiums for them. Like that's going to be a problem with Oklahoma State. Like they have so much money, eventually they're going to start winning some stuff.
Now you also have to develop a skill set as a coach of not just being a good coach, not just being a good leader and facilitator for like the team.
Yeah.
But now you got to learn some soft skills. You got
That's
to
right.
go to some
Yeah.
dinners. You got to schmooze with some
And
people.
is that your thing, or do I need to hire an assistant coach that can
Have
do
you met
that?
some of these wrestlers?
Yeah.
Some wrestlers are like social butterflies.
Yeah.
And some wrestlers are like
Not.
the stoic man in the back
Yeah.
where like if there was a fight,
Yeah.
that's the guy I want. But if we're trying to have fun, he's going to 1-2 step out of there.
That's right. So my job as the head coach, I gotta is that my strength or my weakness, and I gotta go hire for that instead of like a good wrestler that's gonna come in and work out with my guys and help my guys out, right? So that changes the dynamic of like your coaching staff too.
It's a crazy time right now, man.
Yeah.
For all college sport, but also for wrestling.
Yeah, and they're all learning it. Like it's still new enough to where they're all trying to learn it. Like every year it changes, and every year some donor does something different, and they go, "Oh, why didn't we think of that? Why is that illegal? Can we do that?" Like all those things happen.
Have you heard the fabric of conversations change over the course of these last 5-6 years from this perspective of high schoolers? Because I remember when I was in high school before NIL, we were basically wrestling because we wanted like an academic scholarship, or sorry, an athletic scholarship, so that we didn't have to pay as much for school,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
What are the conversations like now for some of these kids? Are they obviously a scholarship is what they want, right? I don't want to pay to go to school, but now it's even more like not only do I not want to pay to go to school, how much are you going to give me?
Yeah, no, it's easy. The conversation right now is, do I need to go to like a prep school or an Olympic training center instead of staying in high school program?
I don't like that.
Yeah, that's the conversation.
You
that's been
already
had.
lost me.
Yeah. And the second conversation is, do I need to start a social media page and build my following? Because that's huge for NIL deals. Huge. And not many people are doing that really well yet. And it's going to start growing a lot more. If you look at like a Bo Bassett and some of those guys that have deals with like Shot Sled and Rudis, his following is huge on Instagram and Facebook. Like he's doing a good job with it. He's going to get a good deal.
Yeah.
Right? He's going to get good money. I think eventually some of these student athletes, if they really want to go that route and get a good paycheck, if that was their goal, social media following is probably going to have to pick up. The guys that really don't care about that are just, I want to go win a national title, I want to go win a world championship, an Olympic title, they probably don't have a social media page. So you can kind of tell, like, what's the goal if you look at that, right? You go, the top 5 recruits in the country, do they have social media following a page? Like, I know that guy's going and looking for his best deal. And the other guys maybe don't have the page. Maybe they still want to go Division I and they get good deals. They're probably in it for the right reason. But that may change. Money changes lots of things.
Do you think there's any way that this like transfer portal reverts back to the original?
Potentially.
The original, meaning when I say the original before the changes, meaning there was that 1 year layover period and things like that. Have there been any rumblings or discussions about? Because I think if you would have had one, like if you would have allowed for these transfer portal changes to allow for the flexibility for the athletes and not done NIL, I think that's a net positive.
Yeah.
And I think if you would have never changed that and done NIL, that's also a net positive.
Yeah.
Because there's still that weighing of like, well, I could leave, but then there's a year where I'm not wrestling, right? So like you have at the individual level have to kind of like, weigh your options. What is more valuable
Agreed.
to me? I'm fine with that.
Yeah, agreed.
But I think having both happen relatively around the same time, you're like, holy shit, brother. Now we're just everyone's shooting from the hip.
Yeah, yeah. And you got like the COVID year. So, COVID kicked them out, so they all got extra
2 years,
year.
right? Wasn't it?
Well, essentially,
I could be incorrect.
that COVID year, those guys lost that year. So if they were graduating, they were done. So they really didn't get it back that year. They got it back the next year where they said, this is a free year. So
if you were a junior, it looked great.
you were fine.
Yeah.
If you were a senior, your season,
screwed.
your career is gone. Like they didn't let you come back, right? You're graduating, you're done. But yeah, I mean, you could still mess with the transfer portal a little bit, but I think that idea is great. Like it's one or the other.
Yeah.
Either way, it would be fine. But then you have transfer portal is the thing you take out and they get a dinged a year. You can take your red shirt if you have one. You can take an Olympic red shirt if it's that year. So you can kind of figure some
You could do it one time.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, right? Is like I want to make sure that we don't kind of create like this like big brother state where it's like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get cracked on.
Yeah, I don't agree with that either. Yeah.
But I do think that like there needs to be some sort of I don't want to say hurdle. There needs to be weighing of options,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
If you want to do this and you want to get paid, fine.
Yeah.
But this will have a direct correlation to your athletics.
Yeah.
And if that to you as an individual, like if your athletics are worth more to you than that 1 year salary, whatever it would be,
Yeah. Sure.
let
Go
the
for it.
individual decide.
Yeah.
But there needs to be a pro and con.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, a bunch of athletes will be like, "Shut up, Ariane.
I agree.
You're ruining our money."
I also don't think like should we stick a 17 or 18-year-old with his first decision in college to like you got to stay there, right? Because they don't know what they're doing.
Meaning that they may have picked like the wrong school.
Yeah, you went there and you had one visit for 2 days, right? You went to a football.
But that's the
game.
beauty of this. Like, dude, create legislation with nuance.
Yeah.
Okay, the transfer portal works the way it works now. If you're a freshman,
Yeah, sure.
not a freshman, sophomore and above,
Yeah.
you do have
You
that
stayed
1
there
year
long
layover.
enough. You stayed there long enough.
You played the game. You
Agreed.
figured this is your okay.
Great
Then
idea.
reap what you sow, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And if you do want to leave, fair. But you committed to them. They committed to you. There needs to be some sort of not I don't want to use the word repercussion, but there needs to be a price to be paid.
Yeah. Yep.
I don't know. I also think when you told me that like the conversation now is, do I go to some sort of preparatory school or like an Olympic hopeful team or something like that? Like that should not be a thing.
That's a thing.
Get your basic education, because I always tell people I tell fighters this all the time, but it's not relegated to fighters. Like I could leave here today and I could get into a car accident where I become paralyzed.
Yeah.
And all these athletic dreams that I have, all the things that I, envision for myself could be gone.
Uh-huh.
And I never want to put myself in a position where I've laid all my eggs in one basket. It's the same with the way I invest, the businesses that I do, whatever it is that I do in my life. I would also transcend that to my athletics and more so to youth. You don't want to teach a kid that you don't need all this other stuff, Timmy.
Sure.
Put all your eggs in this one basket. Is there any other aspect of life that you would tell someone that?
No.
No. You don't need a wife and kids. Only do the military, or you don't need to be like a good Samaritan. Just make money. Go to Wall Street and prioritize shareholder value. Like you would never tell an individual to isolate themselves in one aspect of life. Why are we telling them to do that with athletics?
Yeah.
I don't think that's healthy.
That's a good point. And I think like the prep school thing is more so not the NIL deals. It's more like the restrictions that each state has in their organizations. Like Misha has their rules where there's a certain amount of dates outside of the state and everything else has to be there. You can't train with anybody else but your school during the season. Illinois has their own problems, right? They're sending kids to court for transferring schools because their parents moved.
That's hilarious.
It's crazy.
That's hilarious.
So I don't
Send them to court.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's the prep schools' problem. It's the prep schools that have. We're going to go that route so we don't have legislation like that, so these kids can actually get better.
What are we doing?
Yeah, it's a mess.
Do we not understand as a nation that we don't compete in isolation?
Yeah, it's crazy.
There is still the Olympics.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
I mean, I don't want there to be a circumstance where it's the wild, wild west. I don't want that.
I agree.
But at the same time, it's like, who are these people that are creating these boundaries? The fact that there's any state athletic commission or, high school athletic commission that is actively penalizing and taking kids to court.
Yeah.
With all due respect, and forgive my French, go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Uh-huh.
Really?
Yeah.
What are you teaching these kids?
Nothing.
Do what we tell you, bitch.
Yeah, exactly.
That is unacceptable.
It's a mess.
I don't like that at all. I don't like the extremes on both sides. I don't like the big brother mentality.
Yeah.
I also don't like this like, kid, you don't need your general education. Fuck all that. Just learn how to wrestle.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of either of these. I think we need a little bit of sanity.
Yeah.
A little critical thinking will go a long way.
Agreed.
What are I know that we're having this conversation. Is this a conversation that's had actively amongst your circles, not just the preparatory school, the precursors to university, but also the university? Is this a common conversation, or am I in my echo chamber right now?
I have that conversation. It's not more so for like NAL deals. It's more so for like the elite kids in the group, and most of the kids are really tough and they work hard and they're great. But the elite kids that want to win Fargo, U.S. Open, win World Team Trials, Worlds, they don't want to get stuck in the Misha rules and the IHSA rules and all that nonsense, because that limits them.
Yeah.
If you look at Pennsylvania and New Jersey, where lots of those kids are in a prep school, because that's where most of the prep schools are,
limits them, or limits them like.
It limits them during the season.
But limits them, I guess the question I'm trying to say is like, do they think the limits are unreasonable? Because like I said earlier, I can't do more than 16 practices.
That's right.
Why? If you would have told me 15, I'm okay with limits. I'm okay with guidelines that we all have to abide by. I'm fair with that. Mm-hmm. Let's make them make sense.
Yep.
Help walk me through the process that got you to 16.
Yeah,
Why
sure.
not 17? Why wasn't it 15? Like, what is this? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
it's a good point.
When you're saying that, Misha and the Illinois side are kind of hindering these kids, would you say that it's too much? Meaning you would be fine with some rules and some, curriculum, but let's make it make sense. Like, let's dial it back a little bit. Work with us here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because these kids are gonna go around you regardless.
Yeah, they're gonna do it regardless. But the really big tournaments like Powerade and Ironman, when you start looking at high school tournaments that like all the college coaches are coming to, when you get into Misha and IHSA, certain dates like they don't work out, and so when you start regulating those types of things where they have an opportunity to get in front of a college coach in the folk style manner, if they're not a freestyle person, right, you're limiting their opportunity at that point.
Can you briefly, for someone who might be listening who doesn't understand the difference between folk style, freestyle, and Greco?
Yeah, sure. So Greco is all upper body. It's more of an international style. No, you can't use your legs for any kind of offensive movement, trips, anything like that. Freestyle is, again, international style. It's takedowns, push-outs, and on top and bottom, you can lock your hands and do gut wrenches and turns and those types of things. There's not a lot of control compared to folk style. Like, when you just flip them to the back, you get your points. And folk style really is just a U.S. thing. We're the only ones that do it.
And I'm proud to be
American. If folk style in college, right, you're going to limit in each state's rules. You're going to limit that person's time in front of a college coach at these big tournaments. Where Pennsylvania, Ohio, New Jersey, especially with all the prep schools in those states, like they go to those things and they get in front of college coaches. They eventually see them faster, get scholarships earlier, eventually run out of scholarships or NIL deals because they already got some. But again, you got to go to those tournaments to get better anyway. So if your main goal is to win worlds and NCAAs and Olympics, like I still want to be at those tournaments just to get better. I could care less if I got in front of a college coach at that point. You still got to go to those tournaments to get gritty and fight with those kids that we need to beat. Like if states are telling you can't go because of the dates, or you didn't get spots, or hey, the whole team's got to go or you can't go. Like that's all a bunch of nonsense.
Do you think these tournaments have now outweighed the importance of a state championship or a state medal?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
What do you tell the kid now what do you tell the kid that was like me, who I didn't have any money, wrestling found me, I didn't find wrestling, and I was just happy to get my state medal.
Yeah, sure.
And I wanted to wrestle in college, but like now we're talking about the business of wrestling, right?
Uh-huh.
How do you set up these kids for success in a world that's changing to where wrestling is becoming a business?
Yeah, you just got to have the goal for the kid, right? Some kids are just not going to be that Division I athlete. If you're going to go NAI, well, I'm going to help you be the best NAI guy you can be, right? If you took second, you can go win an NAI title, right? If you took third, you can go win a JUCO title. And again, I go back to Tim Hartung, like you don't, nobody gives you scholarship and you want to walk on a Division I school and that's really what you want to do, I'll help you do it, right? Because they can still do it. People can still do it if they want to, right? So you got to open up that dream for them and kind of focus on that goal, right? But if we don't talk about the goals and say, hey, what do you really want to do? And say, hey, maybe let's push that up a little bit of a notch and say, hey, this is what you should really reach to because I think you could do it. But that comes back to being a good coach and kind of figuring that out with them, right?
God bless. I think you're spot on.
Yeah.
I think that was a very good answer. I sometimes I just wonder, like, I don't want to feel like kids don't have. I hope that opportunities only become greater.
Yeah, sure.
More prevalent, like more opportunities,
Yeah.
and then the opportunities that are presented have the propensity for greater heights.
Yeah, sure.
And I don't want to contribute to a sport where I feel like that's being actively
Sure.
undermined.
Yeah.
So
I don't think that was the initial idea with all those things, right? I think in the back of their minds when they were producing that legislation, I think they meant well,
yeah,
right?
I
Like that's
agree.
all legislation. They mean well, and then somebody abuses it, right? Or somebody finds a loophole and says, "Yeah, we're gonna win doing this," right? So I think it was all good. But again, I go back to like when I coach my offices and my businesses, we have a goal for the year. Like, do we want to get to 500,000, 1 million, 2 million? And I go, like, we need to do this with the kids too. Like every one of them. Like, what's your goal this year? We have a goal? Or you just come in here because you want to be good at MMA? That's fine. Like, I'll help you do that, right? But in wrestling, do you want to have any kind of goal? Like, let's talk about it.
Do you have any sort of emotions towards that though? Like, let's say someone comes in and they say that they want to pursue the sport of wrestling to its natural conclusion, versus the kid that comes in there and says like, "This is just a stepping stone for MMA to me." Does that matter to you?
No,
No.
no, we can still help them get better.
God bless.
Yeah, yeah,
You said that there was a moment in time where you were done competing in the sport of wrestling, and that there was this layover period of like professional endeavors, I'm sure family, wife, kids, and all these things. And then you eventually got back to coaching. Can you walk me through what was it about that time that required you to step away?
yeah.
And then what was it that brought you back?
Yeah, so 2013 was when I stopped coaching in college. So I coached at Missouri Baptist University for 5 years.
Oh,
Then
what
coached,
years?
6 through 11.
Did you would have seen Esmond Ford then,
Yeah,
right?
we talked about it.
Yes,
Yeah,
we
yeah,
did talk about it.
yeah.
Forgive me. CTE's a hell of a
Esmond
drug.
wrestled for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was one of the main reasons I got as good as I did. God bless that man.
Yeah, there you go. And then, so I took the head coaching job at Lindenwood Belleville when they were open because it was like they were starting their second campus. And so they had started an athletic program. 2011, I go over there and start the wrestling program. And then I moved to Maryland Heights. Funny story, I moved to Maryland Heights 2 doors down from Esmond's dad, which Esmond still lived there. So we were 2 doors down from each other. It was weird.
Small world. What was Devon like? Did he offer to mow your lawn?
Yeah, he was awesome. So I stayed there for 2 years. We go to that school from basically 0 students to about a little over 1,000. And we're having our second kid. And so I don't want to do the 24/7 thing. I don't want to do the recruiting in the summer. It wasn't going to work out. Trust me, if I went back and said I stayed in coaching at that time, it would have been a problem. We would have been in trouble.
For your life.
Yeah, for sure. So I step away from it, go into sales for a little bit, and then find a business coaching opportunity at a franchise system, Fish Window Cleaning. So it's a franchise system throughout the country. And so,
Do you think wrestling helped you for a life in
100%.
sales?
100%. Yeah, like the grittiness and the discipline. I think even on the professional side of that too, with the coaching, like I took all that coaching experience and brought it into the business. So I eventually move into another company, Squeegee Squad. We do high-rise window cleaning, and we're a franchise system too. I do kind of the same thing with them too. And so I think all those experiences leading business owners who are buying into a franchise, they're all different walks of life. Like sometimes they're tech people, they're doctors, they have business experience. Sometimes they have no business experience. They're in finance or something. Trying to figure out how to coach them to get to the right goal is tough sometimes because each person kind of ticks differently. So I would say all that time and the calmness to try to get them to the right answer helps me now as a coach because I can go, okay, well, all 200 kids in here are not going to think the same. They're not going to hear my message the same. Some like to hear it, some like to see it, some like to feel it, to learn it. So I've got to do all those things differently for them too. And so I think basically that 8 years off was a huge benefit to my coaching. I would also tell you I prepare better as a coach than I did back then because of that time off and the experience. And I still have my job. That's just wrestling just part-time for me. You can't do it part-time. It's funny, right? So I prepare well for it. But also, there's one weird thing with me is that I get nervous before every practice because I know I want to do a good job. And so it's not me walking in and doing the same thing on the paper from last week. It's me, again, that's why I spar so I can watch you guys. That's why I get there early and look at my notes to make sure, hey, this does make sense in my head and can I actually do this today? And so I get nervous before every practice. I get nervous when Luke Lillidahl comes back and wants to drill with me and practice, especially when he's at Penn State. Like he's a college kid now coming back and wrestle a 42-year-old. Like I got to be in shape, ready to go. But I know I got to be ready to give him what he needs to get better while he's here or just maintain or whatever he needs. When we were training for the World Championships, I know like I had to be ready to go to make sure he's getting what he needs. And so I get nervous even with the kids club. Like if I'm not prepared, I'm not coming. Like I will prepare and make sure I got the right things down. I've watched videos today to kind of go over the technique. I got my plan and say, okay, we're going to do bottom today. I may watch 10, 20 videos on college coaches teaching bottom and just go, all right, what thing kind of clicks with like what the verbiage they're saying. Like, so I do get nervous, but I think it's a good thing because I think because I get nervous, I'm going to do a good job and plan it out well and then initiate it. And again, sparring might change some things, but that's why I get in there and let them spar. I just want to spend 15 minutes watching them. Like, did you pick up anything from yesterday we went over or not? Because if you learned it yesterday, most of the time they're excited to do it. And so when you see them sparring, you can go, okay, he's got that down. That's not really working. We're going to have to go back over that. We're going to have to start over.
I think it's a genius. That's a genius way to start a class that I never thought of, and I'm honestly slightly not upset with myself, but I'm kind of like, oh, why didn't I think of this kind of thing? You know what I mean? I'm going to steal that starting tomorrow, man. I mean, not tomorrow because we have a meet tomorrow, but starting Wednesday, I'm gonna steal that because I'm gonna see how that kind of compares and contrasts, and then I'm gonna shoot you a text and I'm gonna see how that's affected our class.
You'll see it. Trust me.
I think it's genius.
If you'll see it, you'll walk around and go like, hey, we learned how to head block and put our hands on the mat, and they put their hands on the shoulder when they're sprawling, and they don't put their head down. And I go, we're going to start over. We're going to go back.
I create a curriculum. In a lot of ways, the way I coach was like very reminiscent to the way teachers would like set a curriculum for a year. So like I have like this calendar that I have like, okay, by this week we need to understand the fundamentals, and then by this week strong emphasis on singles and double legs, and then strong emphasis on setting up, so like arm drags, feints, level changes, and then let's get into some of the throws, and then I'll also incorporate sit outs, stand ups. Like I have like a rubric of like by this week we should at least be like everyone should know these things exist.
Yeah.
Now the skill level of which depends on the repetition and how much we drill, but at the very least I don't want some kid to be like, I don't know what I'm doing on bottom week 10.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
But no, I'm gonna try that. I'll shoot you a text. I'll let you know how it goes.
Yeah, let me know. I'll come in and help out if you need me to one time.
You said that you had a son, and when you got back into coaching, your son was a variable in that.
Yeah. So our first son we had in 2007, and that's what, like, when I talk about the immaturity in college, 2007 is when I like things click for me. I'm having a son. I got to wake up. I got to stop doing stupid stuff and making bad decisions as an immature adolescent.
How old were you, if you don't mind me asking? In 07?
Would have been 17. Would have been 24. 24. Yeah.
God bless. Still a boy in some ways.
Yeah. So, but he really, I would say like wrestling kept me in school and got me to finish school. I would say he kind of turned my life around. Like I wasn't going to be a bad father, 100%. Like that saved it. I went from not finishing a bachelor's to finishing a bachelor's, a master's, and 9 months done because I knew I was having a kid. And then 3 years later, finished a PhD because I was trying to take care of my kids. I thought I was going to go into, admissions and teaching at that point because I was still at a college and university. So I'm not using that, but I did finish it. It was awesome. But you go from immature guy, transfer 4 times to like, all right, you're going to really buckle down and take care of your son. Like, we got to get a job. We got to finish education to go and, like, you finish all that faster than you finish your bachelor's, right?
Do you recommend fatherhood for men?
Yeah, 100%.
I do too.
Yeah, it's a win.
Yeah. It just made me better.
Yeah, 100%.
It did the same thing for me that I think it did for you.
No.
I'm sure it does it for all men.
Yeah.
It just makes you realize, like, there's things bigger than me.
Yeah.
And I'm responsible for things bigger than me.
Yeah, and I got to commit to, like, their time, like, taking care of them. Yeah, so my second kid's coming in 2013. I decided coaching's not for me anymore. I don't want to, like, there's sometimes I didn't see my first kid awake, right? Because you're coaching 24/7. You're going to 6 a.m. practices. You're coming home at 8 p.m. He's already sleeping, kind of thing. So that sucked.
You felt like you were missing their lives.
Yeah, so second kid, we're not going to do that.
How hard was that decision, man? You're kind of overlooking it, but like you love wrestling.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that there's like this great passion for this sport, and then you're also having to wrestle with the fact that like you're missing out on the most important thing, and that's your children.
Yeah.
Was there a conversation with the wife?
They're not really. I knew that wasn't going to work out for her, but so we just it was done. Missing it, I don't know. Maybe initially, after a couple months, no, not at all,
Yeah.
not one bit. I would never go back to it like that. I did miss working out. Like I said, I get in my sauna suit and I'll work out 2-3 times a week and just sauna suit for an hour and just sweat. So I got into CrossFit. I was coaching and doing CrossFit at a couple of gyms in the area for that time. So I still had like the I'm gonna beat myself up kind of thing.
Did it scratch the itch?
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, really good. And so then we get into foster care. We have other kids too. So we have our 4 biological kids. We have foster kids. We have, well, I would say she's more adopted than foster, but we took a 15-year-old in 2017-ish, and then she graduated from high school. She's in San Diego now, so we just call her our daughter. We call all the foster kids are our kids, so we have lots of kids. And so
God bless.
we see a bunch of them too still. So it's great.
What made you guys want to do that out of curiosity?
You know, me, I just always loved kids. So I always done things with kids, and so obviously coaching kids and that kind of thing. She was a behavioral health nurse, so you know she's got the background to like help those needy kids, and they're having issues. So it just kind of fell in our lap. We decided to do it. It was great.
Well done.
It's been good.
If I didn't like you before, like I definitely do now.
Yeah, it's difficult at times, but that can be another call.
That's
yeah.
episode 2.
Yeah,
Episode
so,
2.
Yeah, I get into 2020, maybe early 2021. My son decides to wrestle. A high school freshman wants to start.
Wow.
So it started late. He's gonna graduate this year.
You didn't think about getting him in like
No, since like the middle of his life, we were not in wrestling, so I wasn't gonna push him. And you know, we tried to do MMA and some other stuff in classes, and it wasn't working out emotionally for him really. So I just let that be. And he decided he was going to wrestle his freshman year.
Dude, you're overlooking so many correct actions, and I have to stop you because you're saying these things nonchalantly. But I got to give you some credit. I'm not trying to brown nose here, but do you know how hard it would be for some men to like not try to gravitate their son towards the lifestyle? I know that if I had a boy, like I don't want to push him, but God, I'm sitting there behind him like with my fingers crossed, like, hey, you like that wrestling thing? You know, so how were you able to step back so well? Was it just did you not want him to be like you? Like
no, totally. But also I'd gotten to the point already where I knew I wanted, if I was going to go back into wrestling or anything with wrestling, I knew I wanted the kids to love the sport and do it themselves, regardless of whether that was the right decision or not, based on he's not at a level that he would have been at if I started him at 6. I think he has so much potential and growth, and he does everything by himself without being asked, that it's a huge win. He will go work out 2-3 times a day on his own. He will get up and make his own breakfast. He's been doing that since he was a freshman. I think like the wrestling thing kind of saved his life. Like he's got his team members around him. He's got camaraderie where 8th grade and below, he didn't really have a ton of friends he hung out with. So wrestling's kind of changed his life. He works out all the time. He goes to Mike's gym and does jiu-jitsu classes, judo classes, and all those things. And Mike lets him come by. And he's always with his friends watching MMA fights. He's always either wrestling, working out in our gym downstairs in the basement.
Embracing the lifestyle.
Like, I gave him the right skills. Maybe that, like, at the time, I was probably like, yeah, I probably want him to get into wrestling. Not pushing him, though, and then helping him right now and just kind of stepping back and saying, if you need Dad's help, come ask me for help. Like, that was the right decision. It's the right decision.
God bless.
Yeah. And then my other kids started wrestling 2nd, 3rd grade for the kids club. And so he decided he wanted to wrestle. Other kids started wrestling. I didn't have to do anything. I still don't do a ton of stuff to push them. I just say, hey, we can do private sessions. If you want help, you got to ask me. And so
do you coach them, or do you like that? Do you want other people to coach them?
I'll let the other coaches coach them. I do some private sessions in the garage with them when they want me to.
Of course.
And so, like, My high schooler, if he wants private sessions, I'll work out with him. My fifth grader, we do private sessions on Sunday with another partner in the house.
Do you coordinate with the coaches, or are you just like hands off?
No, I stay hands off.
God bless.
Yeah. No.
I think that's the proper way to do it. I've seen too many parents that try to. I don't know if the term is like live through their children
Yeah.
or try to push their children to achieve heights they never did.
Uh-huh.
But it's so obvious the parents that are doing it in the right way, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, sure.
Versus the parents that are like trying to. And I want to be careful how I say this because I think the sport of wrestling is good for everybody.
Yeah.
But why you get into the sport of wrestling might not be good for everybody.
Sure.
And that is like, hey, your time is come and gone. Like, let them do their thing.
Yeah. And I think every kid's different. Just like I said, like all the business owners are different. I got to teach them and coach them the different ways. I think eventually if the fifth grader decides in sixth grade he's going to be serious about this sport and wants to go do it, I'm going to help him with those tools. If the senior, even right now, wants to say, hey, I'm going to be serious, I want to go to school, college and wrestle somebody, or I want to eventually get better, I'm going to give them the tools. But they're going to find that path to go, I love this sport, and I've got maybe a good instructor in the house you might want to ask questions about, right? And so I want them to come to me. And then, again, if they want to be good, they want a Division I scholarship, they want to win world championships or Olympics, I will help you do it, and I'll show you the skills to do it. So far, we're on the path with a bunch of our kids in our club that we are going to have some of those guys. Luke Lillidahl might be the first one. And then we got kids that are winning Tulsa now. So eventually, we're going to have some kids that get there. So I think we're on the right trajectory. Again, I still get nervous to go, okay, I need to look at how they're doing on weekends, look at how practices are going with the sparring before, and just kind of basically like you're building the bodybuilder, like, oh, we need a little bit more on the shoulder here. We need a little bit more here. So that's what I think before practices, why it makes me a little bit nervous, but I think it's a good thing.
I think that's also when you've achieved the true genius of any task is now when you're really talking about the game of inches.
Yeah.
Whether it's the sport of football, whether it's bodybuilding, like how to, be symmetrical and all these things, or the sport of wrestling. How do we get that extra little bit out of a super athlete already?
Yeah, sure.
You've now been coaching again for I don't want to say a long time.
We're going into five years.
That's enough time to have high schoolers come and go.
Uh-huh.
What is your relationship like with the kids that you have and the kids that have outgrown you and gone to college or what have you?
Uh-huh.
Do some of them come back?
Yep.
Do you just have a phone full of contacts of kids like constantly texting you and calling you? And because I oftentimes say that coach actually is a title that means many titles.
Yeah.
It can mean father figure. It can
Sure.
be mentor. It can be best friend once they get to a certain age.
Sure.
How are you dealing with adapting to that?
Yeah, it's not that hard. It's like talking to your own kid, right? Like we're planning a 1 or 2 week camp with Luke Lillidahl to come back in and some other college kids with his dad, right? So we're gonna have one of the best in the world coming back to St. Charles where he lives, Penn State wrestler in the area with some other college kids in training. So, we talk all the time. We have some other college kids that we talk to. Right now, because of the age of most of my kids, I do have some high schoolers and then some college kids now. We're like at the stage where some kids have gone to college. Like it might be the first year some kids have gone to college. So kids have come back already to the garage and done training for Thanksgiving and those types of things. We're more at the age where the parents will text me and ask questions about stuff, their kids, their training, watch their videos, which I love, because I know that kid's got the right support. Right,
Like we were talking about
go back
earlier.
to your village, all right. And I think some of the parents are really adapting to I have a different style of teaching than most people do. Like we do a lot of sparring, where if you go to other camps, you might drill for an hour, right, or 2 hours. We don't necessarily do that. I want them to spar more and get into positions so they can feel stuff, where they can figure out like the 6-foot guy versus the 4-foot guy is not going to shoot that shot the same way.
No.
Right. So I can say step 1, step 2, step 3. They're both going to do it, but in a match, they're both not going to get the shot because they haven't figured out like how my body moves and what kind of angle I need to get. So I teach a little bit differently just from being around the Olympic Training Center for a while back when I was coaching. A couple other coaches that were with me at the time too. So we do a lot more sparring. I always watch videos on training. So if there's a new training thing like the Japanese did really well at the Olympics this year, like I'm gonna go study that and figure out like what's good about it. What can we bring back to our plate? I won't take everything. I don't want to teach kids 1,000 moves even though I can. Because if I teach them 1,000 things, they'll do the cool thing, right? They
Start spladling and
yeah,
get pinned 10 times.
they won't do the sprawl. You didn't sprawl, but nice cradle. You pinned yourself.
I have to tell some of my kids all the time. They're like, "But this looks cool, coach." I'm like, "You want to know what looks the coolest? The coolest move known in the sport of wrestling? Getting that hand raise after the match. That's the coolest move."
Yeah, basics.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have a good stance. That'll fix most of your problems.
I tell my kids all the time because they're like, when you were still ask, and I'm sure your kids ask too, like when you were in high school or when you were little. And I told them, I was like, I got a state medal by a double leg, a single leg, a fireman's carry, a sit out, and a stand up. Those 5 things got me my state medals. That's it.
Yep.
I didn't know how to do a split. I didn't know how to do it, but I knew how to do those 5 things.
Yep.
And I could do them against anybody at 135.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't even talk about it, so I don't even know if like half my kids in my club are.
Do they not ask?
No, I don't know.
What the hell is up with my kids then?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I can tell you, I've never talked about anything I've done, and I don't know if anybody knows it unless they've researched it online.
Dude,
like,
you want to know my problem?
I don't bring
is?
it up. They don't ask. I don't talk about it.
My problem is I'm younger, so like everything I've ever done, you could literally Google it.
Yeah, you
so
can't
like,
Google my
stuff. My very first practice, like half the kids already knew.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's Coach Z. I'm like, well, that's great. Like, I don't even have to do like my whole spiel.
Yeah. I think what's like we slow rolled this club because it was essentially my 2 sons, and then Luke Lillidahl had started calling me at the same time. Well, his dad started calling me, and then we kind of were built a relationship enough where he can text me anytime he wants to come work out anytime, right?
That's beautiful.
So we rolled that in my basement with a 10 by 10 little red mat with a kid training for the Worlds on a 10 by 10 mat. But I think it really did help him. But we slow rolled it so much that like 2 years went by, and slowly some kids started coming, and then slowly some more. And then this summer's really when it took off.
How did these initial kids learn about it if it was just such a niche?
One of the parents said something, or they saw me at the MMA gym and said,
can't keep Fight Club a secret.
Who's this kid helping this kid out? Because we know this kid's winning world championships. Like, who's this guy? Right? And so it slow rolled pretty good there.
Were you okay with that?
Yeah, I was going to keep it as small as possible. I wasn't ready to.
Boy, did that work out.
Yeah.
Now you got 230 people.
It really, like, there was 5-10 kids in year 2. There was another 5-10 kids in year 3, and then year 4, where Luke goes from he wins world silver, world gold, world silver, world gold again at a high school level. First person to do it ever. Like Bruce Baumgartner and John Smith haven't done it that fast.
Wow.
That kind of good. And so then the 2 clubs come together, Wentzville and Francis Howell, and that thing blew up incredibly. I think because, I was helping the Francis Howell coach's kid out. I was helping the Wentzville coach's kid out. So I had already opened the garage to like numerous areas of the city, like the whole St. Louis area, that were, all right, well, we open up and do this. Like, let's keep it for everybody to come. And so they decided just to do it together. And again, like the ego stays out of that room because I'm not with, like, you can't say I'm with any club.
Yeah.
It's just me doing my thing. I'm just trying to help whoever wants to get help. If they want to come and work, they want to come and work.
You're with the sport of wrestling.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's what, like, eventually people started figuring that out, and that's what really blew up the club this year. I would imagine, based on how much work we put in this summer and how good the kids are doing, that we're going to run out of space for next year when we open it up in February again.
God
where
bless.
It's going to be, we might need 2 gyms at that point. But again, I'm just letting it kind of do its own thing. I haven't been pushing it. I wouldn't have even started a club or built any gear for any of these kids unless some of the kids asked it. Like, do you have T-shirts for your club? And I'm like, what club? What are you talking about? What do you want? T-shirt, shorts? Sure, I made that. First order form was like a T-shirt and shorts. Second order form was like 1,200 things. They wanted like caps and shoes and all types of stuff. And I laugh about it because everybody asks me if I order my own stuff. And I say, yeah, I order it. I wear it at home. And I will never wear it out of the house because I don't want to wear stuff with my name on it because it feels weird. And it's just one of those things with me. Like, I'm not going to wear my whole name and my face on my shirt. I'm not going to do it. Which goes back to the same thing. Like, people don't know if I've won state or won nationals. They don't ask. I don't tell them. I never bring it up. We don't talk about it, right? They just go, I know he's doing a good job with these kids. He's probably going to do a good job with my kid. So let's bring him over to the club. That's all they know.
They don't need to know the accolades because they see the proof is in the pudding.
Yeah.
It goes back to what we were saying.
And that's how I recruited when I was still college coaching. Like, I would go to the clubs and just work out with people, and they had no idea who I was. Like, they wouldn't know that, right? And they eventually go, okay, the old guys beat me up. I'm gonna go wrestle for him, kind of thing. That's how I recruited.
What is what is the goal now with this? Because this is kind of something that I'm sure if you would have asked yourself 5 years ago, what will this become? Were you always anticipating this outcome? So then obviously this has kind of taken a life of its own, and you're along for the ride, obviously.
Yeah.
But what do you think now? Now, do you want to? Is there a certain number you want to hit? Is there a certain outcome you're trying to achieve? Like, meaning, why?
Yeah, great question. I would tell you the end goal is that I create some kids that win world championships and Olympic championships, because if I can shoot them at least that high, like if their real goal is to win state, if we trained here, they're going to win state.
Yeah.
Right. We'll
Reach for the stars, you'll hit the sky.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. And then some kids will actually get there, because I guarantee it. Like there's five, six kids I can think of in the club that are about 8th grade that are going to get there. They're going to be that good.
Wow.
Winning Tulsa championships and Tulsa finals, Super 32 champs, all those things. They're going to get there for sure. So I would say I don't want it to get any bigger. If it gets bigger, it gets bigger, and we're going to deal with it and figure it out and do the best we can with them. I want them to love the sport and love learning about it so that they eventually do it for life. That's my main goal. And then I'm going to set the bar pretty high, because we got kids that want to be at the Olympic level. So I got to train for that guy. Everybody else is going to kind of fall into place. I'm not going to train for the guy that's just doing MMA, right? I'm going to train for this guy, and this guy's going to have to train with him too. And he's eventually going to get to a point where, hey, I do like this sport. Maybe he starts sticking with it. Maybe he turns into a wrestler.
Can always do MMA after.
Yeah, exactly. So I want to take care of people and help them out. I want to make sure they get to the place they want. I love the sport. It saved my life, I can tell you. It got me graduated, many different degrees. It's given me this kind of life with my kids that want to wrestle. So I want them to love it first and foremost. And if I can get them to love it while they're training for an Olympic title, that's a huge win. Because I know they're going to come back and coach. They're going to come back and maybe their kids are going to wrestle. Maybe they're going to come back and take over this thing that I haven't really tried to build, that I don't want to build. Not because it's not a bad thing, but I never wanted it to get this big. I don't want a building. I don't want a club with subscription payments and having to hire 5 coaches that do their own thing and have a system, because I don't want to have a system, right? So it's hard to do that if you don't have a system, because I know what I'm looking for. So I'm hoping at some point I got a bunch of these kids that come back and they kind of understand that mentality, and I go, all right, that's yours. Or, hey, split it off into 2 and do it. And then the other thing, I want people in the area to come together. Again, going back to the ego of the sport, like I don't understand why the whole state doesn't train together at some point. Like I don't care if there's 5 different clubs. Like, why don't we just all come together? I'm not trying to make money off of this, so I could care less about that.
Do you think that stems from ego or scarcity mindset?
Well, I think some of them turned it into a business. Yeah. I will not. I will never do that.
Do you think that's wrong?
No, absolutely not. I think it just turns into something different.
I agree.
Right? When you put your sweats on and you drill with these kids and you're wrestling with the kids and you're the guy that started it and you're still doing the practices, I think it's a different mentality.
It's more intimate.
Yeah, for
it's
sure.
More authentic.
When you start turning it into a business, I think it turns into just something else. Like you can't stop it after.
It's neither good nor bad. It's just different.
Different, yeah. But I do think all the clubs should come together. I like if St. Louis wants to get better and beat Kansas City, St. Louis needs to train together.
I agree.
If we want to even get better in the national level, I got to bring Kansas City in and train together, or I got to get the Metro East Illinois to come over and train with us too, because Illinois kids are just a little bit grittier than Missouri kids. No offense. Right? But I got to get them all to kind of come together and train, because if you look at like New Jersey and Pennsylvania, they all come together at some point during the month and train together, whether you're competition or not. So I want that to happen. And then end goal, I don't know where it's going to go. I like doing privates in my garage. I like helping kids. And if it turns into something huge at some point, I'm going to need more help, because I still don't want it to be a full-time job.
I was going to actually ask you that next, because you're talking about, and this is listen, 230 kids in one room, all learning the sport of wrestling, and the fact that you're telling me that it's not a full-time job is craziness to me. Mm-hmm. So, like, how are you managing that between, obviously you still have, like, because it's actually something that I run into a lot of trouble with, because I want to be there more for the kids. I really do. But I tell them, I was like, guys, I have an employer, I have responsibilities, and I love you kids, and I want to be there. I'll be there for all the tournaments. I'll be there for all the meets. I might have to miss a practice for whatever reason. how do you set that boundary, and how do you kind of manage that time between both of these things?
Yeah, well, my day job is great. My founders of Squeegee Squad Corporate are in Blaine, Minnesota. And so we have 85 franchise locations. They both wrestled in college. So they love wrestling. They love wrestling mentality.
Whew, that makes it a lot easier.
So it's good. They let me work as hard as I need to, and I give them as much time as I need to. I will get up at 4. I will work out. I will start answering emails, texts, phone calls. If my kid kicks me in the face at 1 a.m. and there's an email that needs to get answered, I answer the email. So they love it. I will work on weekends. I will work at nights when I need to. So they take care of me, and I take care of them. So that's been a great benefit of working there. I work from home, so it's not like I have to go to an office there in Minnesota. I do have to do training sometimes in Minnesota, do high-rise training. We hang off skyscrapers and clean buildings, so I got to teach them how to rappel and those types of things. So, but it's very little. My CEO tries to not let me travel. She's trying to take care of me, so I love her for that. Yeah, so I can get a lot of work done remotely just fine. I business coach them, and so my coaching now then kind of fills in the evenings, sometimes in the mornings if somebody wants like a 5 a.m. practice and come over to the garage and work out. And then in the afternoon, I do some private sessions before the main practice starts and then do the group practice. So it works out fine. As far as like all the other stuff, I don't do it. I will go to like the bigger tournaments to kind of help out and coach as I can. But I make sure like my wife and my family are making that decision with me too. If like I can't travel on weekends, I'm not coming to all the AAU and USA state tournaments on weekends. I'm hanging out with my family. If my kids go and wrestle, I'll go obviously.
Is that where the independent part starts to help?
Yeah, for sure. Like it's $10. It's not a subscription payment. You're not on your credit card all month. Like I just say, I'm done. Send me the videos. Like I'll help you after that. But otherwise, like I try to make sure that the parents understand, like you can't do much in the corner. Like all these kids club tournaments, like everybody's screaming, all the parents, like everybody's screaming.
Yeah.
Right? I'm going, you did all the work 2 weeks ago at practice. Like you're not going to fix anything right now.
No.
Like you may have, like we're going to clap and be positive and smile and get them to relax and stay calm and stay focused. But for the most part, we already have the game plan. We did the work. Like let's just stay focused on the game plan. If I need to fix like small cues, it's 1 word, 2 words, and that's it. I may talk once or twice every period, but that's about it for me.
I had to learn that myself. My first year coaching, I was losing my voice every time.
Oh, yeah.
This year, I'm just like, if I say 2 or 3 things,
Yep.
I realized you're absolutely correct that at this point in time, there's nothing that I'm going to say to you in the heat of the moment with headgear on. You're so focused on your opponent that's going to like resonate and like really change your game. I might say like, adjust your hips.
Yeah.
Lower your body, like just like few little niche things.
have
But
great
they already
stance.
did 95% of it.
Yeah, check your stance.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Lower your level.
Yeah, that's it.
More
you don't have to
feints.
be crazy.
Something.
Most of the time, you get like the new kid that you start yelling stuff at him, and he starts looking over at you, and he's not paying attention, and then he gets taken down because he's looking at you.
They're too focused on getting. I have a kid like that.
Yeah.
God bless.
He just got pinned where
he has hearing aids.
You were yelling.
He was. I got to tell you this because it happened today. He's challenging for varsity.
Oh gosh.
And I'm very like, you guys can cheer, but no coaching.
Yeah.
Like if you want to cheer for someone, fine. I'm not gonna stop you from having emotions, but I don't want anybody on the team like helping someone because it's gonna feel really bad for the kid who's not receiving any help. Like, hey guys, whoever's varsity is varsity, right? And then one of the kids is like, yeah, go Red. And Red goes, go where? And gets taken down. I go, oh no.
Yeah, that's it.
And he's got the hearing
That's the
aid.
problem.
So I think he thought, like, I was there. I was like, no, guys, like, I was mortified.
Yeah. You want to see your kid screw up? Yell at him.
Yes.
Or they get rattled because you're yelling so much. It's stupid.
I always said this too. When I was in high school, my freshman and sophomore year, the coaches had to yell at me. By the time my junior year rolled around, I don't think they said a word when I wrestled.
Yeah.
They just sat down.
You probably wrestle better.
I didn't even have to look over in their direction. The very rare times that I did, and I had really good coaches, they understood that, like, if I'm looking over to you, this is like the one time where I'm like, do I pick bottom or top?
Yeah,
Like, you know what I mean?
I need help.
That's about it, right? It's like,
Yeah. I posted on my group page so all the parents can get notes from any of the tournaments, but I think it was a Michael Jordan quote where he, at the heat of the moment, like he made all those big shots at the end of games, and he would look over at Phil Jackson, and Phil Jackson would be as calm as possible for the last 10 seconds of a world championship game that Michael Jordan's got to make the last shot. He would look over at Phil Jackson and go, if Phil was calm, I was calm. And so that's what I do in the corner. Like, I'm not I'm not going to get rattled in the corner because I don't want you to get rattled when 30 seconds is left and you got to win a world title and you got to score 2 points now.
Yeah.
Like I might be nervous in here, but you're not going to see it.
Do you get nervous when you corner?
Oh yeah, for sure.
I get more nervous when
100%.
I corner, not just wrestlers, but also fighters. But when I corner,
Yeah.
I'm way more nervous than I ever was when I competed.
Yeah. Agreed.
I don't know where that comes from. I think
it goes back to being nervous at practice. You're nervous for the product you just pushed out, and is my kid going to actually stay focused the whole time and actually produce where he should produce? Because I put in time with him, right? So you don't want him to lose. And I get fired up inside too. I want to get over there and put my shoes on and start fighting myself sometime.
I also want them to have the same love. Like a lot of the love that I developed for wrestling stemmed from my success in it.
Yeah.
And I want these kids to feel for themselves and about themselves the way I felt about myself.
Yeah.
Like the confidence that gave me, and like how it really made me like fall in love with hard work. Like,
Yeah, sure.
you know, nothing feels better than putting forth effort into something and then seeing the fruits of your labor. And I want them to get that feeling.
Yeah.
So maybe that's a part of it as well. Listen, I've taken 2 hours of your time, man. This was an impromptu request by Mike Rogers, and I am so glad he reached out to me. I'm so glad I got to meet you.
Yeah.
With due respect, if you don't mind, I would love to pick your brain here sometimes, like through text message or phone calls.
Yeah.
I love everything you've said tonight has either resonated me, I have agreed with, or I understood why.
Sure.
And there's some things that I'd like to steal from you and use with my kids if you'd allow me to.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think when next summer rolls around, I would very much like to. I know you're not trying to grow the program.
Yeah, send
but
them.
if this is what's coming, especially $180 for the whole thing, I'll sponsor the whole team.
Yeah, there you go.
You know what I mean? So sorry, man. We're gonna do like 20 more guys your way,
Bring them.
brother.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for
no
being on
problem.
Easy Talk.
Appreciate you having me. Yeah.
Thank you.